Hey, welcome to the 380th episode of the Random Podcast from Heck. My name is Tony. This is the podcast about random things in the world of entertainment, which includes movies, TV shows, and comic books. Big shout out to Andrew Loken. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 to 45 minutes of extra podcast entertainment every single week. I've been lately doing a lot of look backs at the classic Marvel What If comics from the 1980s, late 70s. They're really cool. I think, I say this all the time, but the original What Ifs, I mean, they were really, they're kind of groundbreaking in a way. And then after a while, I felt like they just kind of got diluted and just so full of doom and gloom. So they've been a lot of fun looking at the different ideas that they had back at the time. Because when we didn't see so much of like the multiverse, we have so much of it now. It's like not as exciting. I sometimes also talk about random comic book topics, and I'm making some of those available individually. So you can also help out by supporting, buy those individual episodes at the Patreon shop on my Patreon, and you get some more podcast entertainment, support me, and also if you don't want to become a patron and don't want to buy podcasts or whatever, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or 3. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. But again, going into Patreon, you can buy a podcast. I've been putting them at like $3, so it's like the same as a coffee thing. But keep in mind, if you sign up for Patreon using the iOS app, Apple will charge you an extra 30%. And if you try to buy any of the podcast episodes through the iOS app, it will charge you an extra 30%. So I think it's like $4.50. So, or just go to your browser, any browser, and you can get it for regular. Okay, all of that blah, 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 business, but we got to do that. What is going to happen on this show? The movie feature, so there wasn't really anything huge, I don't think, that opened up this past week. There was Werewolves with Frank Grillo, and I was just like, I watched this, hadn't even heard of it before. I watched the trailers, and it just looked like, they might be doing some slightly different groundbreaking? I don't know. Slightly different things with werewolves, but I was just like, I just don't feel like watching this. I don't want to pay to see it in a theater. So I decided to go and see Wicked because everyone is going on about how the movie was so great and everything. So if you haven't read my Twitter review already, you can hear about what I thought about Wicked. We also have. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about Interior Chinatown. I think I briefly touched on it last week, but I really thought it was more about how cool of a person Chloe Bennett is versus the things of the show. So I've watched the entire thing. And we'll hear a little bit more about that. I'm not going to go episode by episode since episodes have all 10 dropped at once and they've been out for a few weeks now. So, but you can hear about that because it is. I do feel it's worth talking about. So I really want to help promote the show in any way. Not that they need my help or not that it'll make a difference, but we can do that. We also have the Star Wars Skeleton Crew new show. 2 episodes dropped, so you can hear about those. Another crazy episode of Silo. I love that show. And then we're going to do one Cobra Kai because I think. I think it helps me out, keeps the show going, so it's not just like the Cobra Kai show, and it's easier for me. I don't know if I said that. And then one episode, or the final episode, sigh, of Superman and Lois, plus some comics and some news. There wasn't a whole lot of news. Yeah, it's weird how the news goes because like last week I didn't expect a whole lot of news because of Thanksgiving week. But this week, I didn't see a whole lot. The first thing I saw was Marvel news. It's like, okay, Rita Ora. So she's a pop star, a British pop star. And I just know that she's married to Taika Waititi. So I read, it's like, oh, she's possibly up to be a villain in the MCU. And I was like, okay, all right, that's cool. But then the source was The Sun UK, I guess. So someone was like report, because that's what a lot of the news is. And that's basically what I do. I'm not breaking news myself, but a lot of the news that you see, it's like someone, I call it the copy paste news reporting. And it's just, someone posts something, then someone else posts it, someone else posts it. And hopefully, like who you figure out who posted it. So is it legit or not? So with this, The Sun UK, I don't know what their track record is. And I don't think it's super great, but I don't know. It's probably better than mine because I don't break news, like I said. So we'll have to see if that's going to be accurate or not. David Ayer is I feel bad for David Ayer. So he's still going on about the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. I guess with Creature Commandos. Oh, I didn't mention Creature Commandos. Okay, Creature Commandos, 2 episodes drop. I don't know if I'm going to get to watching it. My goal, what I would love, is to watch at least 1 episode and then try to edit it in. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, because I'm recording a podcast now. I can try to squeeze it in, at least 1. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But with Creature Commandos coming out, it's apparently got good reviews. I haven't watched it yet, I think I just said that. So with people talking about that and everything, people are also talking about Suicide Squad movie and the Suicide Squad movie. the James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, I can't even talk. So David Ayer, he said that the movie, his version of Suicide Squad, that wasn't really what he did, that things were kind of edited differently. There's other stuff that he filmed and everything. And he said many times that it wouldn't be that expensive to complete what he did. But the main thing is, why does the studio, it's about profits. And is it worth it for them to invest that money to put this out? And also when they're not really looking to look back, they're trying to go forward. So that's the other thing. It's like, is it worth it? Is it part of their vision plan and everything like that? So he's pushing again. There's a couple images that he released on X, on Twitter. And I don't know. I mean, I would definitely watch it. I don't know how much of an interest there is. And, the main thing, people, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would watch it. The question is, would they pay to watch it? And that's what it comes down to. Because if people are like, I don't want to pay to see that, but I'll watch it, then, you can't get stuff for free. And there's so many people that they expect us, as you're listening to this podcast for free, maybe, but I guess that's a different story. So when it comes to movies and comic books and stuff like that, that is the thing, is if you feel that you have the right to read them or view them, consume things for free without paying, just because they are available, if you were able to find a pirate version of whatever, doesn't mean it's okay. And you can say, well, the Hollywood makes so much money, and I can barely afford my rent or whatever. That's not the point. I mean, we need these movies and comics and books and whatever to be profitable, or they're going to not continue to make them. So would people pay to watch Suicide Squad? I would go to the theater and I will pay $15 or whatever to watch it. So we'll have to see about that. What about Jyn Erso? I like Jyn Erso. Felicity Jones. I like Rogue One, and it's a movie I've always been meaning to watch again. But I think that there's a lot of cool things. I wasn't super crazy that it was just like so locked in to right before episode 4, and I felt like, do we really need this? But there's cool moments that I recall. Like I said, I need to watch it again. But she was asked while promoting another movie. It's like, will we ever see her? Because the thing is, Felicity Jones signed on for like a multi-film deal, for Star Wars. And obviously, with what happens, the only way we'd see her again if it's like a prequel or something like that. She's probably not going to be in Andor season 2 because that's supposed to end right where we first see him, so it wouldn't make sense to see her. And I mean, I don't know what sort of because I feel like we have enough of her story already that I don't know if maybe they could do something. I don't know. But what she said is, she's like, never say never. She's like, she will live on. I don't think that really means anything like that. The one article I saw was like, oh, she's teasing, possible return. It's like, it's not really teasing. She's just saying that, she thought she was a badass character and, she would love to do something, but it doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. So but hopefully, that'd be cool. What about some DC stuff? So this is like almost the end of the news. James Gunn, he was on a podcast, a Happy Something podcast, I think it was, I forget, and he commented about Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Dr. Doom or whatever, and he said it was a smart move, and he's excited, he's excited for it. So that's good, because a lot of people seem to are like worshiping at the altar of James Gunn, which is cool, because when he first signed on, there's so many people like ripping on him. And because, it's like all the Snyder Army people that, they don't want anything that's different. I think James Gunn is brilliant. He's done a lot of cool things. But you also got to remember, this is a guy that said The Flash was like one of the best superhero movies. I enjoyed The Flash, but it wasn't one of the best superhero movies. Take everything with a grain of... I think I was also kind of bothered when he made the comment about like Superman right after... I'll talk more about that later, that thing. So anyways, but it is good to know, because I think James Gunn, he's got a good mind, and he knows the comics, he knows the characters and everything like that. So Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Doom, yeah, you could say it's a publicity stunt. It's a, should it really happen or not? We'll have to see what they plan with that. But he's on board with it, so I mean that's a plus. Not that his word is like the official final say so of all nerds or whatever. So we'll have to see. He also, apparently, he contemplated having Robert Pattinson become the DCU Batman. He thought about it, but then he's like, Basically, he's saying that the DCU Batman is going to be older, significantly older than Pattinson, and he is embracing like what they're doing. He wants to be able to do like the main DCU movies, and he wants to do like Elseworld stories. So that's cool that he's not locked on, we can only do this one thing. So, let's open up and do a different version if there's a call for a story. We're going to see Batman in The Brave and the Bold with I believe Damian was a Robin. So yeah, it would make sense that he's got to be older if he's got a kid and all that. As far as going back to Superman and Lois, apparently the showrunner said that they had plans for Brainiac and Darkseid, but this was before the show was canceled and everything like that. We'll never get to know like things that they had planned. Oh, and then the last thing is like John Cryer, which I feel bad for him, because he was Lex Luthor in Supergirl in the Arrowverse, but then when they were going ahead with Superman and Lois, they recast Lex Luthor. And I don't know the specific. I think the way he found out was not the best way. They're just like oh, by the way type of thing. But he kind of wishes that he could have been part of it, because and I don't think it's just because he wanted a paycheck or anything, but it was a good thing. Well, we'll talk more about Superman and Lois later. That is going to be the news for this week. That might be a record of the shortest bit of news. I don't know if I just missed a bunch of news. That is it. We still have so much more to talk about. Okay, comic book. So this is the point. Blah blah blah. Poor Tony. I'm just like counting. I mean, the next couple weeks, and then I can like catch my breath for a couple weeks, and hopefully get caught up on things. But I was not able to read a bunch of comics, and I got pulled to extra things at work. Yeah. So whatever. But we're not going to talk about that. So with Image, I didn't really see. I don't know if did I read anything at Image. I don't think I did. So here's what we have. Here's what you should be reading. So we had Ain't No Grave trade paperback, which I never finished. I think the last couple I didn't read that. There's Free Agents, number 6. I'm not reading that. I've been curious about that. I Hate Fairyland, number 18. Now here's the thing. I forget the last issue I read. I enjoyed the series. There was a couple issues in a row where I was like, I wasn't as wowed as some of the other ones. And then I thought it was like going to be ending around like 17, 18 or something like that. But then I didn't even have a chance to read Scotty Young's newsletter, but he said something like I Hate Fairyland will never die, so maybe it is going to keep going. So we have that to look forward to, I guess. So I don't know. Let's see, Through the House, one shot. I don't know what that is. Walking Dead Deluxe 102. How did I feel like the 101 just came out, because I remember I didn't read it the first week and I read it like after I recorded it. And then What's the Furthest Place from Here, number 20 came out. That is, I really dig that comic, and I highly recommend that. It's this, the release schedule is so weird that I don't even, because I can't remember when the last issue came out. And then I kind of forget about it, and then like another issue comes out. It's like, oh, cool. And then, so it's an interesting book. Definitely check those out. At Marvel, guess what? So we have all new Venom. So if we go in alphabetical order, Venom's now at the beginning. So you know how I feel about Venom, right? So skip on to the next one, right? Wrong. I actually read this comic. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do it for you, for the listeners. If this is an all new Venom, I don't know what the heck happened in Venom War? Is that what it was called? I don't even know now. I skipped all those issues, and I was kind of worried. I was like, what am I missing? Am I missing anything important? Am I going to be confused or whatever? Is it going to trickle into other stuff? I still have no idea. But all new Venom came out, so I was like, all right, I'll check it out. So this is written by Al Ewing. Carlos Gomez does the art, and Frank DeMarta does the colors. I kind of like this issue. I don't know the reasons that I like it, if that's a good thing or not. We kind of have a bit of a mystery, because the main thing is, who is Venom? That's really what this comes down to. And I'm not sure how they sold it. If they I could look at the solicit, but I kind of don't want to click over, and because I always feel like that's cheating, just actually getting information, right? Which is what I should do. So it's not Eddie Brock. It's not Dylan Brock, which I'm really kind of not really, but I'm not like really annoyed, but I'm kind of annoyed with Dylan Brock. Or maybe it's just the idea of him being Venom just doesn't seem right. I remember when we first saw Dylan, I feel like he was like maybe like 6 or 7. He's really young, and then somehow he's just started aging. But maybe what it comes down to, because I think, I don't know if it was in the recap thing, but there's somewhere where, it must have been in the first page thing, where it mentioned that Dylan, and this kind of makes sense, that he's actually the son of, so his mom, Eddie Brock, and possibly Venom. Because what it could come down to, if I'm understanding this correctly, whenever he, and see, now this is where he can't be like a teen, because then you're making, when Spider-Man was in symbiote suit, that was like, 15 years ago or whatever like that, and you can't put a number, age number, you got to be vague about it. If Eddie was Venom when he had some hanky-panky with his ex-wife or whatever, then it's possible somehow, and I don't want to get too specific, but it's possible that some symbiote DNA mixed with Eddie Brock's sperm DNA and went into Dylan's mom's DNA. So it's possible that Dylan has some Venom DNA in him. So if that makes him not a normal human, not a pure plain human, and maybe that could explain how he's aging a little more. If you want to do that, fine. It sounds weird and everything. I get it. I'll buy that. That's my big problem with Dylan, is I feel like he's too old. He's aging too quickly. But whatever happened at the end of the Venom War stuff, the Venom symbiote is with someone else. Who is the host? And that's the big kicker in this issue. And that's what makes it kind of fun and exciting for me, because it reminds me, and this is something I kind of want to talk about on an Off of Mind episode, is like mysteries in comics, like the long, I planned on doing this before, but for some reason I never recorded an episode about that. Maybe it's because I don't know if there's enough for me to talk about for like a half hour. But, so I won't go into specific that in case I do that someday. So here, there's like a trial going on, and there's a bunch of people at the trial, like people that we know from regular Marvel, supporting or lead characters in some cases. And the way the comic sets it up, they're totally playing with us and teasing with us, where they're like, suspect number 1, blah, 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 suspect number 2, when they pop up. So we have all these people that are here where they potentially could be the Venom host. And then something obviously is going to happen and action is going to kick in. And when this happens, like all the suspects conveniently have been removed from the main area. So by the time Venom comes there, none of the regular people, none of the suspects are there. So it still means that any one of them is still a suspect. And that's where I think it's kind of fun that it's like, okay, who could it be? And it might be like, it most likely is this person, but then maybe some of the suspects are almost too obvious. And there's one in particular that is like that this can't be possible. But what the character says, it's like, wait, why are you saying that? What do you mean that there's something that you could do? What do you mean? So I enjoyed the comic. Now the big thing is going to be is once we find out who Venom is it still going to be fun and exciting? And I think it'll depend on who that person is. Now the other thing also is like what about Eddie Brock or Dylan Brock? Where are they? At some point they're probably going to come in. Let's just leave it at that. Avengers number 21. This was weird because it's on the cover, Avengers versus X-Men round 2. I'm like, wait, where was round 1? And then you start reading it, and the Avengers, they go to Alaska where Cyclops and his X-Men, the Jed MacKay Ryan Stegman X-Men comic, because this is a comic that is written by Jed MacKay, so it's cool. It makes sense that he can team them up. But I was like, wait, why are the Avengers? Avengers are outside the X-Men's base, and Carol's like yelling at them, like, get out here, whatever, all this stuff like that. I'm like, wait, they're about to throw it down here. But no, they're really there to play baseball and talk about different things. And so it was good because there are some important things, and we do get some updates about some of the characters and what things mean. And it was I enjoyed it. So while we may not have had huge, massive, supervillain attacking or whatever like that, I think you need issues like this every once in a while to humanize the characters, to make you care about them. Because like now if we shift over to Avengers Assemble, number 4, while all these characters, we got some cool characters here, we don't really have the team connection. We don't have the human, even though we know the characters, there's not really like a whole lot that's making me personally like overly like care for them or care for this team. It's like, okay, I like this character, that character is okay, I like this character, but whether they win or lose, I'm like, okay, well, I hope they win. But yeah, so what's interesting here is Victorious, that's her name, right? She's Dr. Doom's ex-fiance. He Power Cosmic gave her power or something. Was that even a sentence? And things didn't go well when she was about to get married, thanks to Johnny Storm. And Dr. Doom, since he became the Sorcerer Supreme, since he stole it in a sense, basically, from Doctor Strange, he put like a mystical dome over Latveria. And Victorious, I forget what her name is, she wants to go back inside, because she loves Latveria so much. She's like, I just want to breathe the air. She wants to be back there, and because she's been shamed, she still wants to make things up and whatever. But she's like that, so she's like pounding and pounding, and it's like sending shockwaves out and it's like threatening all the people around. So Avengers go to show up. Some Avengers go to show up, and then another team is dealing with like the Serpent Society and all their constant thefts around. It's like, wait, what are they trying to do? And there's a lot of distractions as to what are they really trying to steal. So we have these two like kind of stories going on. All I will say about this issue as a whole, I mean, it was okay. What was really not okay is something happens to Captain America at the end. And I'm just like, ugh. And I kind of maybe get where they're going with this possible direction as something that has happened before. But yeah, I do not like that. So yeah, we'll see what happens from there. There's another Conquest 2099. I'm not reading that. Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine, Weapon Extraction. So now with this comic, I meant to look this up. So this is by Ryan North. He's a funny writer. Javier Garon, his art, Edgar Delgado does the color. So we got a good team on here. Now, I didn't read this because I wasn't sure if this was just a reprint of the multi-part Deadpool and Wolverine just like story that was like in the back of issues. So as I was like, no, I'm not going to get this if I've already read those stories or kind of skimmed through those stories. So I don't know if this was any good. And the thing of those stories, I didn't love those stories. And I can't remember if that was Ryan North or someone else writing that. So I didn't read that. So I can't talk about that. There was a Holiday Tales to Astonish. I did not read that. You know how I feel about these. Now, here's the thing. First, there's a Fantastic Four story written by Jerry Duggan with Phil Noto doing the art. So that's got to be really, really good, right? So that means, okay, Tony's probably going to read this at some point. There's an X-Men story written by Daniel Kibblesmith with Pat Olive doing the art. See, he's good too, so that's probably good. And then there's a Spectacular Spider-Man story by Jean Luen Yang. And the reason I said that is they have like adjectives. Jean Odd Luen Sing Yang. They're trying to make like holiday nicknames in their names, whatever. So that threw me off. And then Dylan Burnett does the art. So yeah, I'm probably gonna end up reading that at some point, but I did not read that now. And my thing with these issues is, they're just like one-shot stories, and nothing. They can be fun sometimes, but my thing is, with comics being so expensive, I guess you're reading it for entertainment, and it's nice sometimes to get the holiday stuff, especially if you're looking to give it as a gift to someone. But yeah, we had another Marvel Zombies. I should probably check this out. I have no idea how. I don't remember if I read the first issue or not. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, number 27. I did not like this. I started reading and then I just started skimming and barely got through to the end. So Miles left with T'Challa. They were going to Wakanda. And one of the things I mentioned last week is like, what about his parents? What about school? See, he's not on summer vacation. So school is actually, we see his school and he gets, what's his name now? Is it Surge? His clone sort of brother is trying to morph his body to look like Miles and take his place, which is like asking for trouble. But then the stuff with Black Panther, yeah, I'm not digging this vampire stuff, and I just don't know what's going on. I had a student that said, because since I have comic stuff in my walls, I have some Spider-Man stuff, and I have one like Spider-Verse comic. It's like the art drawn by Todd Knock, has like all the main Spider characters. And the student, she's like, you should have Miles Morales up. And I was like, well, Miles is in that poster. But she's like, no, he should have his own poster because he's the best Spider-Man. And I was like, well, I don't know if he's the best Spider-Man, but yeah, he is. But and I was gonna say, well, not so much in the comics lately. I don't remember. Actually, I don't think I said that. But that's the case, and I hate to say it. But hopefully things will get better. NYX number 6. I was kind of let down with this comic. I couldn't finish reading it. Thankfully I stuck through and skimmed it because there is an appearance by someone, and I think maybe I'll spoil that. But the main thing is the characters go to a Dazzler concert, and I think this is going to continue in Dazzler's comic. But one of the things that bothers me is like, so Kamala's, she's hanging out with the X-Men and everything. She's going there, and she practically has like a Ms. Marvel shirt, like, the red shirt with like the blast, the sun blast, or whatever you want to call it on there. And it's like, you have a secret identity. You can't do that. That's too close. Because again, with your skin complexion, your hairstyle, I don't think the little Ms. Marvel mask is a huge, cover for your identity. Because then stuff goes down and she ends up putting the mask on. And I think, I don't know if she changed the shirt or whatever. So that just kind of bothered me. And then, but then they're like going through like metal detectors when they're entering the venue. Did Laura set off the metal detector, or because other characters, like, open mutants are walking through because it's a mutant concert? I don't know how to explain that. But what's her name? Kidden from NYX, original NYX, she shows up. And, because we have Laura here. My question is, it's like, what the heck, where's she been? And that's something that Laura says, like, when you didn't come to Krakoa, it's like, I just, she wondered if she was dead or something happened to her. And that's the weird thing is, when we had that NYX comic, and then we even had like then we had the Marjorie Liu NYX comic, which was good. And then they came back again, and it was like, it wasn't, I forget who worked on that one. But then we hadn't seen her for a while, so I was like, what happened to her? And so hopefully something good will come out of this, that they'll do her right. Spider-Gwen, Ghost Spider. So we got this tarantula dude. He's like causing a whole bunch of trouble, and even so, like Luke Cage is here. Like the mayor is even getting flack for like stuff that, because I must have, maybe I didn't fully read the last issue, but apparently Black Tarantula, is that his name? And I don't know why I just totally blanked on that. But he put out like an app, and it's supposed to, I don't even get it, and so people are kind of up in arms over stuff, and it's so I think there's something like, you could choose if this person is a bad guy by like voting on it. So that's like mob mentality is not a good thing. So I don't know, but I do like the fact that because Gwen has been kind of hanging out with Jessica Jones, and then now she interacts with Luke Cage, and he's like, yeah, my wife, blah, 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 or, Jess said this. So it's cool that she's making these other connections to other Marvel characters besides just Spider-Man, Miles, and Silk. So we'll see where it goes from here. Star Wars, Battle of Jakku, Republic Under Siege, issue 3 or issue 7. And I'm just, I don't know. I've been struggling with this, trying to see what yes. But then what the thing that bothered me here. Now, one of the things I am interested in is we have the one character, I forget her name, but it's basically, I believe she's the mom of Kerry Russell's character from Rise of Skywalker. So that, to me, her story, I'm kind of interested, like what her character is and how they're connected and so forth. But then we also have that Valance character that shows up in here. And I don't really care for him. This half cyborg head dude just does not seem like a Star Wars character. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Ultimates, number 7. There's it's kind of like some propaganda. A lot of people are kind of questioning, are the Ultimates, good, or the heroes? And so there's like some tension rising, and some of it, it's like, we're seeing the anniversary of the big disaster, where Aunt May died, and Norman Osborn's wife, and Norman Osborn, he's dead too, right? He's supposedly. So yeah, so there's different things going on, and Hawkeye's the different Hawkeye's up to some stuff, and it was a okay issue. It didn't blow me away. Werewolf by Night issue 5 is out. I didn't read that. Wolverine number 4, in the coils of the Constrictor. So he's fighting Constrictor, which I didn't read that. X-Force number 6. I tried reading this, and then the last Marvel book is X-Men number 8. So this is a Jed MacKay, Ryan Stegman, Raid on Greymalkin, part 1 of 4. And looking at the cover, I was like, why is Rogue fighting Cyclops? And then I was like, oh, maybe I looked at the cover wrong, and they're fighting side by side and everything. But now looking at it again, it's like, no, she's punching him and his visor's flying off. It's like, what's going on? But this was I really like this issue. Not just because Ryan Stegman's back. but that is a huge part of it. But we see like Beast, he's been kidnapped. This Gray Malkin, these people that have turned Xavier School into a mutant prison. I mean, they're just horrible people, and that it's just when you read these stories, and I know it's supposed to make us angry or whatever, but it's despicable, and it's just like it makes me like not want to read the comic and everything like that. But some other people have been captured, and we're seeing like a crossover with Rogue and Gambit and those characters here. So this is gonna be cool to see like what they're gonna do over at DC. So I did not read very much at DC, and I talked about before like my situation with DC. So that's part of the reason why I didn't get a chance to read everything. So what I did read, so we had Absolute Superman issue 2. So this is Jason Aaron and Rafa Sandoval. I'm intrigued with what's going on here. I'm still on the fence. Is this something that I personally need? Because not everything has to be written for me. I question, like with these Absolute books, do we need these different versions of characters? Not really, but it's I guess it could be fun to see a different take and whatever. So with this, we're seeing this different Superman, and what's nice about this issue, because one of the problems I had with the design is like he doesn't have a cape, and it feels so wrong to see Superman without a cape. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't look right. But he kind of does have a cape, sort of. There's something. Now, one of the things that I'm not really sure about is like, okay, what powers does Superman have versus what powers does his suit have? And if he's relying a bit on the suit, I don't know how I feel about that. But again, it could serve to give us a different angle, different take on Superman. So it's not just Superman, and maybe it helps to make it a little more realistic or grounded that, how does Superman have all these abilities just because he's from another planet and because of a different colored sun or whatever. And so, yeah. And then he basically interacts with Lois Lane here. She popped up at the end of the first issue, and this is a different version, different take on Lois Lane. She's not a reporter. So, they're at odds right from the beginning, and I'm like I said, I'm intrigued to see where this is going to go. Batman, was this 155? This is an interesting story arc. So we had the death of the mayor, and I don't know if I spoiled like who the main suspect is, but it's a character that has been around for a long time in Batman comics. And when we got that revelation, it's like, this can't be right. It's like, this character wouldn't kill the mayor. It's like, what is going on? But then we get some flashbacks, like the story backs up, and it's like, holy crap. It's like, dude, what are you doing? And so now it's like, did this character really do it? But then maybe there's something more to it than that. So we'll have to see. So I enjoy that. We also have the story arc about this character that popped into town who claims to be long lost or Thomas Wayne's illegitimate son, and he wants his share of Wayne Tech or Wayne Enterprise, and which just seems silly because I mean, how does that stuff work? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a whatever business lawyer, but Bruce Wayne is controlling Wayne Enterprise. Now, there was no will, or was there, or I'm sure there was a will, but it would probably say that, these stakes or shares or whatever go to Bruce Wayne, his son. And just because someone else is legally, if someone else is Thomas Wayne's, if Thomas was his father, it doesn't mean he's entitled to any stake at a company because his dad didn't put him in the will, didn't give him any shares or whatever. So I don't get how that works, or why you would claim that, because it's the same thing. Like if Thomas Wayne says, okay, here's Wayne Manor, I'm leaving this to Bruce, and then someone else comes to town and says, hey, that dude was my dad, I should get some of this house. Why? You're not in the will. It could be like if there's siblings and then the person says, I'm going to give son A this and son B or daughter B or whatever, you get just a car and not the house. Or so, I don't know, it just seems silly. And the idea, I don't think we need Thomas Wayne having an affair. I don't, some people might be like, oh, it makes him more human, more, he's not up on a pedestal, he's not like, perfect. But I don't think why do we need that? Why do we need to break down? Because what are you going to do next? Like say Uncle Ben had an affair? It's like it's just doesn't seem right. So we'll see. And that was all I read at DC. We had Action Comics 1078. I will, and these are ones I will read these. I will try to catch up after this. It's just this comic lately. I don't understand how it's just so weird. We had Justice Society #2. So this is by Jeff Lemire, and the first issue had a promising start. So we'll see where this is going to go. Birds of Prey 16 came out. That's been a good book. They're trying to find out like what happened to Cassandra, Batgirl. Speaking of Batgirl, Batgirl #2 came out. So I'm bummed I didn't read that because I really liked the first issue. We have Shazam 18 came out, and if I was just not doing a podcast, I would have dropped this comic a while ago, which is a bummer because I really like Shazam. I think he's a really fun character and there's some cool things, but I am just not digging what's been going on lately. Poison Ivy is 28. I mean, this is where I'm kicking myself because I was like, oh, it's just like a 6-issue series, a 12-issue series, whatever. I missed an issue. Well, it's going to be over soon. I don't need to read it. And then it keeps going and keeps going and it keeps going. So I am so happy. I'm so impressed and happy that Poison Ivy is at issue 28. That is awesome because most comics, they're lucky if they can even reach issue 20. So I think that's great that her ongoing. And I'm really curious. Someday I got to get caught up. It's like what stories are going on here? There was a Two-Face one shot by Christopher Ward. I'm curious about that. Then we have a holiday, Batman, Santa Claus, Silent Night, or something like that. I didn't read that. There was a Creature Commandos book. I don't know if this was the first issue or not. I didn't read that. Then there was DC's Batman Smells, Robin Laid an Egg. I probably wouldn't have read that. DC Horror Presents came out. And then there was a little Batman comic and then some Scooby-Doo stuff. But yeah, so that's it. I didn't read any of those. So you let me know if those were any good or not. I will read some of those as soon as I can. But let's keep the show going. Should I still talk about comics? And that's the other thing I wonder, with comic books, because of the price. I know not everyone reads comics, and so many times when I talk to people, you can't dive into the comic stuff because people aren't reading comics. And every once in a while, someone may pick up a trade or something like that, but not very many do that I know of. And people just know the movies or the cartoons or the shows. So what I'm really curious is like with the listeners, you out there, do you enjoy the comic section? I'm assuming you do, since I'm assuming some of you are still listening, from carrying over from the comic buying days. I don't know, but I always wonder because like some of my coworkers or some of my students will be like, "Oh, what's your podcast?" I'll listen to it, and I'm like, you're probably not going to care. I mean, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, you're not going to care about the comic part because no one's reading comics that I know of. So I don't know. But that's comics for the week. Let's move on.
All right. And now at the moment, I have not been looking forward to Superman Lois, Season 4, Episode 10. It went by so fast. This was such an amazing episode. And it was, I'm not going to lie, it was so emotional watching this. And I kind of, I'm not looking, the reason I'm not looking forward to it is I have a feeling it's going to be hard for me to go through and discuss like the certain things that happen. So, well, let's just get on with it. So it starts off, Lana and John Henry, so it goes back a little bit, backs up from the last episode. Lana and John Henry are playing pool at the bar. They talk about, Sarah going away for a year. She's not sure how, she can handle it. And plus she's not sure how she and Kyle are going to pay for it, but, they'll figure something out. And, he asks her like how she feels about, her daughter being in, Sarah being in another country. She says she's nervous, she's scared, but she's also excited for her because she got to do like the one thing that she never did, travel the world. And then she makes a comment about, not being able to see each other or something like that. And then, she's kind of referring to the fact that she and John Henry aren't seeing each other that often because, he's, at the DOD, he's like in Metropolis or anything like that. And, he says that he'd spend more time with her if he could. And she's like, we should be honest with each other. She's like, we've been on 4 dates in how many months? And then there's like a boom and like bottles are like rattling and stuff like that. So he tells her to stay back. And she's like, where are you going? And he's like, well, that thing, it killed Clark last time. It's like, I can't let that happen again. So he goes to the door and then it like explodes in. He goes flying back and everything like that. So finally, dust settles. Lana gets up. There's rubble of like wood and dust and like that, and she sees like outside Doomsday's like boom, like stomping on Superman. So then it cuts to the end of the last episode. Lois yells at people, "It's like take cover," because after Doomsday whoosh, like whisks Superman away. Then she sees Amanda, or like out in the street. She's like, "See what he's done." And Amanda's like, this was never part of the plan. And Lois like, there was only one plan, hurt me and my family. And Amanda's like, I tried stopping him. He wouldn't listen. And Lois is like, you thought you could fix Lex Luthor. There is no fixing that psychopath. She's like, I told you this is exactly what would happen. And now everyone in this town is in danger. And Amanda's like, which is why they should leave. So Amanda starts walking away. She gets nearly knocked back by Doomsday and Superman like flying by. At first, when I first saw it, I was like, did she just get like hit by them? And I rewound it and I was like, oh no, they just barely missed her. So they land in the football field. Doomsday slams Superman down, like pounds him twice, and he goes for like a third blow, but then he gets knocked back by the boys, and Doomsday goes crashing like through the bleachers. Superman stands up. He's like, what are you doing here? And Jonathan's like, we're trying to help you. And Superman yells, he's like, no. He's like, you're not ready to fight that thing. And then Jordan's like, well, then how are you going to stop it? He's like, I'll find a way. And Jonathan's like, Dad? He's like, this is not open for debate. Go, keep everyone safe. So they fly off. He sees Doomsday like flying towards him, and he flies up to intercept. So at the bar, what's left of the bar, Lana makes her way to John Henry. He's like in pain. He's like trying to, he's like kind of like up against a wall in the back. And he's like, oh, I'm fine. Even though, he kind of lifts his shirt. He's a little bloody, so I have broken ribs or something probably. And he's like, I need to get back to my garage. He's like, there might be something that I can do to help. And she's like, well, then I'm going with you. Then he's like arguing, but she insists. She's like, I'm the mayor. She's like, I'm not hiding this time. So he just gives in. The boys return to town. Lois like, where's your father? And they say that he took off, with that thing. And she's like, you have to help him. They're like, we tried, but he won't let us. Then they see like the two fighting in the air, just like punches and like heat vision. And then they kind of knock into his helicopters in the air. So Lois yells at the boys, and they fly up. The pilot actually falls out, so they catch him. But then the helicopter crashes in the street, and Lois like ducks her like around up like this pole in the building. The blade just like sticks right in the side, just barely like misses her. Then Doomsday and Superman arrive. Doomsday is like pounding on him again. He's like stomping on him over and over again. The boys land by Lois, and she's like, help him, but they argue like, she's like, well, forget what he said. She's like, it's going to kill him. And then they're like, fraternals. And they dart off. It's like, is that their battle cry? So Jordan lands behind and starts like blasting with his heat vision. He's like, come get me. And Jonathan like kind of goes off to the little side, starts blasting as well. And then they take off, and Doomsday follows them. So Lana asks John Henry, how close is he to completing a warsuit? And he's like, nowhere near. And he's like wincing, but he says that he's fine. So it's like, okay, is this something going to happen to him? Is there going to be whatever? So he looks in box, and he's like, everything is at the DOD. He's like, except the prototype that me and Nat were working on. So he takes out this like circular thing, and he says it attaches anything metal or kryptonite, and then boom. And she's like, well, how many of those do you have? He's like, just the one. And he's like, we only have one shot at this. And then she's like, well, what are you going to use? And he's like, something that makes a bigger boom. Lois is trying to wake Clark up in the street because Doomsday took off after the boys. And then she tells him that, it took off after them. And he tries getting up. He's like, I told him to stay away. And she's like, they wanted to save their father. And he's like, it was going to kill you, Clark. He's like, well, I'm their father. It's like, I have to keep them safe. And she's like, well, how do you plan on doing that if you're dead? She's like, the boys aren't living in a bubble anymore. It's like, they live in a real world with real threats. And he's like, they're not ready. And she's like, alone, sure, but they have each other, and they have you, and that's going to have to be enough. It's time you accept that you can't do this on your own anymore. And then John Henry's like, he doesn't have to. And Lana's like with him. She's like, we have an idea. So the boys are flying side by side. Doomsday's following them. They like start flying through some trees and stuff. And then Clark's like, he calls them. He's like, boys, come back. He's like, lure that thing to Main Street. When you get to me, split off. And then there's this like cool shot, he's standing in the street in front of the burning helicopter. First you see him from behind, this cape is like, blowing in the wind, whatever. And then it turns in front of him and you see like, whoosh, like the helicopter's like just fire going from it. So they come at him and he's like, now. So Doomsday approaches with his fist out. Clark kind of manages, he just like steps to the side, just barely dodges it. And then John Henry's hammer flies through the flames, hits Doomsday, knocks him back. And then he's just like lying there. And then Clark looks with his like supervision, whatever, and it's like sort of X-ray where like that. It's like I don't know if he had a cracked skull, cracked neck, or something like that. Then the others like step forward, and then he's like, "Nice work." And Jonathan asks if it's dead, and Clark's like, "For now." So Jordan's like, "Well, won't it just come back stronger?" And he's like, "Not if I get it to the sun first." He's like, the sun doesn't strengthen Doomsday like it does for them; just it makes him weaker. And Jonathan's like, "Well, what if he wakes before you get there?" And Clark's like, or Superman's like, this is going to work. And Lois smiles. She's like, I love you. And he grabs an arm, flies up. So you see like in space, he's like kind of holding him. He's like flying towards the sun. The others are making plans because once Luthor realizes that thing is gone, he's going to come after them. And, he doesn't leave loose ends behind, including Amanda. And she knows everything about him. So they need to find her and bring her here. So the boys take off. Meanwhile, Amanda's driving some back road, between fields or whatever. She gets a call. It's Lex. And she stupidly answers. And she's like, what? So it's like, do you not know Lex? You should not be answering your phone. Because it's like, okay, think about this. He's in the war suit, in John Henry's war suit, modified war suit. You know what's going to happen. She's like, what? And he's like, I expected loyalty, Amanda. And she's like, that works both ways. So then we see, it's this stupid fat face in the, I shouldn't say that, his stupid face, Lex Luthor face in like the helmet view, whatever. And he's like, you had mine until you betrayed me. And she's like, betray you? She's like, I was in Smallville. You sent that thing to destroy the town. You don't give a damn about me. And he's like, I used to. She's like, you never loved me. You can't love anyone else. She's like, I'm resigning from Luthor Corp. First thing tomorrow. You can have your shares back. And he's like, that won't be necessary. And then she sees him coming up in her rearview mirror. He's like, goodbye, Amanda. And he fires a rocket at her. And then the boys fly just as it explodes. So they like take off. He asks Milton, he's like, where are they taking her? And he says that it looks like, back to Smallville. So at the Gazette, Amanda says to Lois, she's like, I should have listened to you. And Lois like, that doesn't matter. It's like, Luthor tried to kill you once. He's going to try again. So you need to tell the world the truth about what Luthor's done, all of it. And she's like, that's why you brought me here, for some sort of confession? And Lois like, the world won't believe me because of your lies. It's like, they will believe you. And she's like, Lois? And Lois is like, you created this problem. Now you're going to fix it. So Lana's like, live camera's ready. And they got a big camera there. And she's like, once you're live on the air, Luthor's done. Game over. Lois says that. So then Amanda's like, Luthor will try and stop us. And Lois is like, my boys will slow him down and will give us the time that we need. And she's like, that suit has been upgraded. It's laced with kryptonite, and the weapons have been improved. Plus, he has Milton on comms. And John Henry's like, Milton? And she's like, Milton Fine, Lex's tech expert. He's like, that's the guy who stole my suit? And she nods. And he's like, where is he? So Doomsday, out in space, he's starting to actually wake up. He's starting to come back to life or whatever. So they're close to the sun, but they're not there yet. So then kind of Doomsday sort of like breaks free from, because Superman kind of has him over his head. So Superman like pulls back his fist to like punch Doomsday, but then Doomsday holds up a hand kind of like to stop him, like calmly stop him. And then it has like flashes back to being like Bizarro and his Lois, in his world and stuff like that. And then he just kind of spreads his arm, and there's like more memory flashes. So Superman, he like understands that Doomsday doesn't want to fight anymore. So he just kind of lightly pushes on his chest, and he starts going back towards the sun. He starts to dissolve as he approaches it, and then like just flame erupts. So Doomsday's gone. So Lois is on there. This is Lois Lane reporting from Smallville, where an attack is underway. And then what? The camera cuts out. So Lana's like, this again? She's like, the network's down. And Amanda's like, Milton knocked it off. She's like, Lex is coming. So the boys are outside. Lex comes. He shoots Jonathan and sends him flying. Like, I think he crashed into his hotel, like in the second floor. Then he grabs Jordan, pins him down on the ground by the throat. And then he retracts his helmet so we can see his stupid face and his stupid grin on it. And so basically, he's getting off on killing a teenager, which is like really disturbing. He's like, it doesn't matter if it's Superman. It's like he's still a kid. So he's just like holding him. And Superman is like floating by the sun, and you know his skin is starting to heal, you know, his like face and his hands and everything like that. And then he hears Jordan. I guess Jordan's like, please don't. So he zips back to Earth. But it's gonna take him a while. So Lex is like, I let you live, and you think you can what? You are weak and worthless, like your mother. It's like begging won't help. And then Lois is on the street. She's like, Luthor, stop. It's me you want. And he's like, I think we're past this being just about us, Lois. So Lana and Amanda like come out too, and Lois is like, you are such a coward, wearing a war suit to fight my 16-year-old son. He's like, your son with powers. And then she's like, Clark didn't have powers when he beat your ass all over the street. He's like, shut your mouth. It's like, oh, you're so cool, Lex. So he lets go of Jordan's throat, and she's like, why don't you stop going after my family and come after me? And he like starts to like stand up because he was like, you know, crouched over. And she's like, are you scared of me? You're so scared of a woman, you have to lash out against everyone but her? So, and then it's like, you can see, it's like, okay, wait, does she have that disc thing in her hand? Because she's taking a huge, you know, gamble here. He's got rockets and whatever, who knows, whatever else. He's like, I will kill you right here. And she's like, then do it. She's like, I am not afraid of you, but you have always been terrified of me. So he's like, time to die, Lois. And then she slaps the device on his chest. He like looks down, then he turns his helmet back on, and he like, it blows, and it just makes him kind of like do a flip back a couple times. So he's on his knees, and then Lois checks on Jordan, and he's like, I can't hear John. So Lana calls out to Lois, and then Lex starts getting up. He's like, we're not done. You can't stop me. And then she's like, no, but he can. Superman swoops down and takes Lex away. Lois tells Jordan, he's like, go find your brother. So Superman takes like Lex up in the clouds, and there's like some lightning and stuff like that. Lex shoots some kryptonite darts at him. So one goes in his legs, one's like in his shoulder, but one's like in his chest, like by his heart. Jordan finds John, he's unconscious, and he feels for a pulse, and there's like nothing. So this is the last episode. People are gonna die. I'm gonna be perfectly honest right now. And hopefully I'm not spoiling this if you're like listening your way, depending on this for your whatever. So he starts doing compressions. He's like, John, wake up, come on. He's like, wake up, John, you can't die, wake up. And then you know, nothing's happening. Jordan's face starts like glowing, and then there's kind of like this small like spark explosion. He gets like knocked back, and then Jonathan's, and he kind of like lifts his head up. He's like, what the hell? And Jordan's like, you're alive. And he's like, did you just blow me up? And then Jordan goes like, hugs him, and he's like, please don't leave me. And he's like, I promise I won't. So Superman is still trying to like pull the dart thing like out of his chest. Lex flies at him, he grunts, he's like, you die. So Milton's like watching, and he says something like death to Superman. I think he's like, that's something, I don't know if he says that's something you don't see every day or you do, because you know, Superman's died already. But then this alarm goes off, and he sees like in a camera there's like a bunch of DOD soldiers like head outside like whatever the room building he's in. He's like, but I can always watch this later. So he gets up from his big desk with all his screens, and then, don't move. So he gets surrounded. And then John Henry walks up. He's like, you stole my suit. And Milton's like, can you maybe describe it for me? And he grabs him, like shoves his face down on the desk, and he's like looking, he's like, ow, oh, that suit, my bad. So John Henry's like, you're going to do exactly what I tell you. So Lana's like, the power's back, he did it. So the boys run up. They hug Lois, so they're back. Then they're like, where's Dad? And she's like, fighting Luthor. In the sky, Lex is like,
why won't you die? Superman like catches a punch, blasts him back with heat vision. He finally pulls. He's like pulling. He pulls it there, and then he manages to pull it out. He has one like in his shoulder, his leg. So then he takes the one that he pulled out. He just like between his hands, just like crushes it and turns to dust, and just like throws the remains away. So then the AI tells Lex, "Kryptonite screws disabled." He's like, "I will kill you and your whole damn family." And Superman's like, "I told you before, Luthor, you'll never hurt another person." So he just grimaces, flies at Superman. Superman just like punches him back. He goes away, kind of like, tumbles in the air. And he's like, "You came after my wife?" He punches him again. Lex comes at him. "My family?" Lex comes at him again. Punch. "My town?" Comes at him. Punch. He's like, "But all that ends right now." So then they fly at each other, and as they're flying towards each other, Superman pulls back up a punch, like as they're flying, slams into Lex in the suit. The suit just shatters, and then Lex starts falling. So he's falling and falling like that towards whatever. Superman catches him just as they hit the ground, and then the other sees it sort of like right over the town. So the others are there. Lana's filming him, and Lois and the boys like hug him. And he's like, "It's over." Then 1 year later, it's like, wait, what? So it's a year later, and we see a bunch of people gathered. Like Kyle and Chrissy, they have the baby, and it's like, wait, did she just touch her stomach? There's like wedding music going on, so it's outside the barn. Clark's there. So at first I was like, wait, is Lois and Clark renewing their vows? But then Clark's with Lana, walking her down the aisle outside the barn. And then John Henry's there, and he tells John Henry's like, "Well done." Lois is standing at the front, and she tells Lana, he's like, "You look beautiful." And so Lois is officiating the wedding, and she says something like, "Finding true friendship is rare and harder, later in life." She's like, "But I found it twice with Lana and John Henry." And she's like, Lana, she's like, "I heard stories about you from Clark, but it wasn't until we moved to Smallville that I understood why he loved you so much." And she's like, "You were there during my battle with cancer." And we see like some flashbacks. She's like, "You were there for my family when Clark was taken from us, and you have always been here for this community. You, Mayor Lang, are the best of Smallville." And then she's like, "And you, John Henry, since you arrived in our world, my life has never been the same. And now I can't imagine it without you. It's like what you endured, what you're willing to sacrifice to make a world that's not your own, you truly are a man of steel. It was no shock that the two of you would fall in love and end up together." And then she's like, "You ready for vows?" So as they're doing their vows, we see like kind of flash, we hear, Lana, "Do you take John?" And everyone's like, congrats from everyone. There's dancing, there's cake, more dancing, rings on the finger. I do. And then, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." More dancing. There's like Jordan's like dancing with Coach Grimes. Kyle and Chrissy, they show Lana their latest ultrasound. And Lana's like, "I'm no doctor, but it looks like you're having another boy." And Chrissy's like, "How am I going to handle 3 boys?" So then she goes off, right, to go to bed because the baby starts kicking. So I don't know if she has to go to, pee or something like that. So then Kyle's like, "When Lois said you were the best of Smallville, she was 1,000% right." And he's like, I'm happy for you. I just want you to be happy." So he starts walking off. She's like, "One more dance?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's dance." So that was very nice. Then it's nighttime. Sarah's like on a porch of the house. Jordan's like, "Oh, there's a reception going on. What are you doing here?" And she's like, "That barn is cursed. If I go there, it might all blow up." And he's like, "Well, it's good to have you back." And she says, "It's good to be back," but she's like, "I don't think it's going to be for long." She's like, "Spending a year overseas just showed me that, Smallville isn't where I want to be for the rest of my life." And she's like, "Is being a hero, is that where you want to be?" He's like, "Yeah." Or, is this where he wants to be? He's like, "Yeah, I am." So then John Henry, he finds Nat outside. He asks if everything's okay. She's just like looking at all the stars. And she's like, "I think Mom would be happy that we're okay." And he's like, "Me too, Bug." He just calls her Bug. And she's like, "I know this isn't where we came from, but it feels like home." He's like, "Yeah." So then later, Clark's in the kitchen. He's looking at that embroidered thing hanging that says "It went by so fast," which is the name of the episode. So Lois comes in. She's like, "What are you doing here?" She's like, "You okay?" He's like, "Yeah, just your wedding got me thinking. Our next chapter." He's like, "What do you think Superman and Lois Lane will be remembered for?" And she's like, "I'd like to think truth and justice." And then he's like, "And a better tomorrow."
So then she looks at a text she got from Janet. She's like, Luther was denied, or the text is like, Luther was denied his appeal. He's being transferred back to Strikers for life. So she's like, she lets out a breath, fresh air. So she tells Clark he was denied his appeal, and she's like, we did it, and they hug. So then in the jail, Warden welcomes Mr. Luther back, and Lex says, he's like, well, I assume my lawyer sent you my list of requests ahead of time. And he's like, yes, I did receive that. So to get to there, he's like, unfortunately, that won't be possible. So the cell opens, he goes inside. He's like, what is this? This isn't my old cell. And the warden's like, no, it's not. You see, things have changed around here. So he like calls out, this other door opens like that, and then Bruno Mannheim walks out. And then Bruno's like, one thing hasn't changed. A man in charge still needs a good chair. You, Alexander, you're going to make a hell of a chair. And then Lex's door closes, and he just stands there staring. So boo-hoo, poor Lex is going to have to bend over and be a chair for Bruno. So then we hear Clark talking. He's like narrating. He's like, the first time I died, there was nothing but darkness. Then suddenly I came back. Because of Sam's sacrifice, and we see like flashes, different moments, stuff like that. He's like, because of Sam's sacrifice and the heart he gave me, I lived for 32 more years. So that right there, Clark's dying in 32 years. He's like 32 more years of life on this world. But the world I came back to was struggling. And we see like flashes of different stuff. He's like, people have lost faith in each other, lost faith in humanity. So there's like some really bad scenes, poverty, like riots, police and stuff like that. He's like, the world felt broken. After Luther was defeated, I started thinking about my legacy. So he's at the fortress and like some things are moving about, whatever. He's like, you think about what I wanted to leave behind. And we see the boys are getting like real costumes and being like knitted by fortress technology, whatever. He's like, the thing I knew, I couldn't do it alone. I needed help from my family. And then we see him flying with the boys next to him in their costumes. And then John Henry and Nat come in their armor. John Henry has a red cape, so he looks just like Steel from the comics. He's like, help from friends and even from former enemies. He's like, I spent the last 20 years trying to save the world. And then we see him sitting next to Lois. They're visiting Bruno, like in the prison. He's like, now I want to help fix it. And then to Lois, Bruno's like, is he really serious about this? And she's like, I told you. And then Bruno extends his hand to Clark, and they shake hands. And then he continues narration. He's like, I didn't just want to be a hero for people. I wanted to connect with them. So we see him at the Gazette. It's like bustling. There's like all these workers there. He's like, change their lives for the better. So Lois and I set up a foundation to help people. Turns out our celebrity had an upside. People listened when we asked for help. We weren't able to solve all the world's problem, far from it. We helped push the needle in the right direction. We gave people hope, something that's been missing for far too long, especially with Zack Snyder in charge of Superman. There are shots like newspaper articles from, then like back at their farm. He's like, at home, life was good. The years continued to pass. Lois and I got older. So we see them and kind of like aging and graying. It's like the boys grow up. So we see like the boys walk in the front door, but then they change into two older dudes, two older actors that kind of look nothing like them. It's like, what? He's like, and then they became men. Lois and I were so proud of them. Both John and Jordan got married, had kids, lots of kids. So we see like them all coming over. Just I couldn't even count how many kids. So many grandkids, like all these boys and girls there. He's like, it was such a joy to be around. Lois and I felt incredibly lucky. Our hearts were full. There were so many special moments. Every day was a special gift. Lois was always there by my side. For the rest of our lives, we never spent a day apart. And we see them, a lot older, like sitting on the porch, having their wine, whatever. He's like, that was a magical time. Every day was better than the last. Something we never took for granted. Then, Lois's cancer came back. So this is where it starts to go down. He's like, only this time, it was too much. So he was like, it was hard seeing her so weak, knowing she was dying. So she's in bed, and, he's laying there, the boys are there. She's like, I love you, Clark. He's like, I love you too. And, so they're like all sad and everything. Like, he's like, everything good in my life, it came from you. And then he continues, but in that moment, right as she passed, something happened I will never forget. So she's kind of laying there, and she's like, Daddy? So I don't know if she saw Sam. And then she passes. So the boys go to the side, and then he's like laying next to her, he's crying. And he's like, it was never the same after. So he's sitting in the kitchen, and we see like there's a pie. It's like, your favorite pie is from Lana. He's like, friends would stop by most days, to check on me. Jordan came like almost every day. Also John. He's like, but even with friends and family, the world just felt less. She's like, she was missing, and being alone in our home was just rough. So I got a dog. He got like a golden retriever. And he's like, how have I never had a dog before? So what's he named the dog? He's like, Crypto and I did a lot of walking together. We took a lot of naps, and we see them lying in bed, and he's like, laying next to him. He's like, we watched a lot of sunset. He's like, the years we had, they meant a lot. And then we see him like walking in town with Kyle, and he's with Crypto, and he grabs his chest. He's like, just like that, my heart gave out. He's like, the irony is, it was almost exactly where my dad died. He's like, thanks to Kyle, I didn't die right there, but my time was running out. Then we see him lying in bed with the boys there. He's like, the second time I died, it was so much different than the first. It was amazing. And we see like his young ghost, astral self, whatever, sit up. He's like, the feeling that washed over me, I can't even begin to describe. Suddenly, it came to me what life was all about. He's like, joy, hope, forgiveness. And so he's like walking around the house, and he's like seeing, different like memories of people. And like Lex is there. Like Lex looks old, but he's in a suit, and he's like just sitting at the table, and he just like puts his hand on his shoulder. And then he gets up, and like Lex is gone. So he forgives Lex for everything. And he continues like, so hope, forgiveness, or wonder, friendship. And so he's just like seeing everyone in his life around the house. He's like, family. And then the boys open the front door, and Lois is there in like her red dress from a past episode, already referenced it. And he's like, love. He's like, God, she's beautiful. He's like, I came to this world alone, and when I left it, I had so much, and it was all because of love. It's the thing that makes life worth living. Do everything you can to find love, to give it, to hold on to it, because life, it goes by so fast. So they're just like in each other's arms, and that's where it ends. So, Superman lost his power, and he ended up, he had 32 years, lived with a dog in town, and then he died. But he got to see everyone. So that's just, I guess it's happy in a way, and the whole thing is about them, and they got to be together again, but it's kind of sad in a way, but that was it. So, oh my gosh, and they just like really sold that this was about, Superman and Lois. And yeah, bravo to everyone involved. This was just such an amazing episode, and they did a really good job, and everyone just nailed it, especially because like it was like halfway through the episode when like Doomsday's gone, or even like when Lex is defeated. I was like, wait, there's still like 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes because of commercials. So like there's still like half the episode left, and then it's like a year later. So it's like, wow. So yeah, that was just crazy. I was just like bawling, like, because it's all about love. That's the important thing. You don't got love, you don't got anything. So that was such an amazing episode. So it's like, now we got the movie to look forward to, but I don't even want to think about it. So we're probably gonna get a trailer. Did we get the trailer yet? We're probably gonna get the trailer soon. But yeah, and it was just weird because like James Gunn, he like Tuesday, the day after the episode drops, he's like, oh, just wait till you see, this new version of Superman. It's like, dude, let us like deal with the fact that we just lost the Superman we've had for over 4 years, and such an amazing job. Yeah, so there you go. All right, now after that, let's do one more episode of Cobra Kai, which, with the way things are going, this could be a sad episode too, because what's going to happen to Carmen? What's going to happen to Miguel's mom? So, season 6, episode 8. So it starts off, Johnny calls Amanda while they're boarding the plane, and she's in the waiting room with Rosa. She's like, still no updates. She's still unconscious. They're monitoring the bleeding, And he's like, I need you to do something for me. And he's like, with Miguel dropping, she's like, yeah, anything. He's like, with Miguel dropping out, it's like, I need you to find Kenny Payne and put him on a flight to Barcelona. She's like, yeah, of course, I'll go right now. And then they kind of get stuck waiting for this dude who's holding up the line by looking through his like overhead bag. And Johnny's like, hey, could you hurry up so the rest of us can get on? He's like, don't worry, but he's like this kind of like shorter, like slightly tubby, guy in a suit. He's like, don't worry, buddy. Economy ain't going nowhere. And he kind of like slaps him on the shoulder. And Miguel immediately is like, okay, Sensei, stay calm. He's like, the last thing we need is to get kicked off the plane. Daniel gets out of the shower and at Chosen, he's like, what a day. He's like, I can't imagine what Johnny's going through. He's like, I wish we could do something. And Chosen's like, he says, of course, but also we have a big problem, here. He's like, how did Kreese know that you were searching for answers about Miyagi? And Daniel's like, well, his partner was there when I was asking Gunther about the headband. So she probably set the whole scheme in motion. So he's like, now they got this long-haired brute, doing their dirty work. So he's like, if Kreese thinks he can pull this poop and get away with it, he's got another thing coming. So it's like, I'm sorry, Daniel. I don't care how much karate you know. It's like, you don't always come across as a tough guy when you're making your threats. Kreese talks to Kim and Quan, the boy band Quan. He's like, looks like we got LaRusso rattled. He's like, now the real fun begins. So he tells Quan, he's like, dial up the pressure. Enemy soldiers should never rest, even if they're off duty. So Quan bows, he's like, understood. And he leaves. And Kim's like, I do not approve. It's like, our team should be focused on a tournament. It's like, I won't have my grandfather's students risking the shame of disqualification for petty fights off the mat. He's like, your grandfather is the one that taught me that battles aren't reserved for the battlefield. The kids will be fine. Trust me. Like, Kreese is just so annoying. He's who's worse, Kreese or Lex Luthor? So Chosen said that Kreese expects retaliation, so they must show restraint, focus on the competition, so they will take revenge on the mat. Daniel says that he's right, and Chosen apologized for not being there to help him. He was in a very bad place. He feels great shame, but now he's focused. So it's Daniel's turn to rest, so he will stay awake, make sure Cobra Kai does not strike again. Daniel's like, yeah, I could use some rest. He's like, but if we're going to stand down, we have to go into defense mode. That means the kids will have to stay in for tonight. And then Chosen thinks back, like in the hall, Hawk's like, he talks to him, and he says that, they need to clear their minds. He was wondering if it was cool if they hit the town. And Chosen's like, only if you hit the town hard. So, and then he tells Daniel, he's like, oh, not to worry. He's like, the kids will be okay. In town, the kids are at a restaurant. Devin wonders, like, what are they going to do with both Sensei Lawrence and Miguel gone? Hawk says that he heard that they're going to fly in Kenny. And so Devin's like, and Dimitri's like, yeah, because the kid that pooped his pants is totally going to save the day. Woo! So Dimitri sucks too. Devin, she like wants to say, she doesn't know what to say. And Robbie says, he's like, well, I hope Carmen's okay. And he asks Sam if she got to talk to Miguel. And she's like, yeah, for like 30 seconds. And she's like, well, how are you feeling? He's like, not great. He's like, thinking of adding some rum to my Coke. It's like, you're such a loser, Robbie. And she's like, yeah, right, you don't drink. Now might be a good time to start. I've been screwing everything up since Tori put us on a break. And you know what makes it worse? It's not even affecting her. She's been fighting better than ever. It's like, okay, dude, she just lost her mom. And it's like, so you're such a clown. It's like, what do you know about anything? It's like, yeah, he had a rough life too, but it's like, come on. And she's like, so she's like, Tori chose the other side, and I feel terrible for her, but we can't keep letting her get in our heads like this. It's time to accept that she's against us. So it's like, wow. But it's not surprising from the little princess who's always coddled by Daddy Miyagi-Do. There's no way she would have not been the captain. I'm sure Daniel would have found some way. Then stupid Quan comes in, he's all smiling, breathing. He's like a mouth breather. His mouth is always open. And so, like, of all the countless restaurants in Barcelona, he manages to easily and immediately find the Miyagi-Do kids. And so it's Quan, one other dude, I forget his name, and Tori. I think it's just them. I didn't see anyone else, but there must be someone else. But it does seem like Tori wasn't expecting to see them because she's kind of surprised. So Sam gets up, she tells Robbie, she's like, I'm going to go get some air. So the others walk like further into the place. Some guy, as they walk by, calls Tori the tooth fairy since she knocked the girl's tooth out.
So I guess everyone in town just happens to be watching the tournament, maybe. I don't know. Zara's there, and she hears the other guy say, like, oh, Tori's such a badass. So she's not happy about that. So Amanda goes to Kenny's, rings his bell. He answers. And she's like, Kenny, hi. She's like, I come bearing good news. How do you feel about a trip to Spain? He's like, what? And she's like, I'm sorry. That sounded like I was selling a timeshare. She's like, a spot opened up in Miyagi-Do, and they need you to compete in the Sakai Takai. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Have a good day, Mrs. LuRusso. And she's like, wait. And she like puts her foot in the door to stop the door. She's like, you don't want to go? He's like, no offense, but I don't want any part of Miyagi-Do. Not after what your son put me through. And she's like, this is about Anthony? She's like, I know you had your issues, but I thought everything was fine now. He's like, fine? He drugged me and made me crap my pants. And he's like, you haven't heard? Look up poop butt memes. It won't be hard to find. He doesn't say poop. And she's kind of in shock, and he closes the door. On the plane, Johnny's like in the middle seat next to Slating his big hat with a little dog. The seat map says 11 hours remaining on the flight. He hits a call button, and Miguel's like, what are you doing? And he's like, trying to get us home faster. So the flight attendant comes up. He's like, excuse me, stewardess. He's like, why is the plane doing this bendy thing? And, you see that the path of the plane. She's like, you mean following the curvature of the earth? And he's like, map looks flat to me. Tell the pilot to fly straight. He's like, we're trying to get home. So Miguel's like embarrassed. And Johnny tells like, everything's going to be all right. He's like, don't worry. And he's like, how can you tell me that when my mom might be dying? He's like, well, I'm just trying to help. And Miguel's like, well, you're not, okay? You were disregarding me all tournament, and now you're making things worse right now. So you'll probably make things worse at the hospital too, like drinking in the parking lot when Robbie was born. He's like, no wonder Robbie's so messed up. He's like, hey, man. He's like, that's a low blow. He's like, don't bring Robbie into this. He's like, I know you're upset you didn't get the captain spot, but he won that fair and square. He's like, it's not my fault you choked. And then the flight attendant's like, is this man bothering you? And Johnny's like, no. And Miguel's like, yes. So she's like, come with me. I have a seat available for you up front. And he's like, Miguel, come on. Really? You're going up front? Miguel? So he walks and he closes the curtain behind him. And then the dog next to Johnny starts like whining. Chosen's looking for the kids. There's a line at this place. He goes to the bouncer. He's like, need to go inside looking for teenagers. He's like, I heard that one before. All right, now get lost. And then Kim walks out and the bouncer like says to her, he's like, see, I told you, no teens inside. So Chosen's like, you let her cut the line? And he's like, yeah, she's hot. And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, looking after my students. What are you doing here? She's like, looking after my students. And he's like, or maybe you're looking to make more trouble for Miyagi-Do. And she's like, not unless you give me a reason to. So then the bouncer, he's like, take whatever this is someplace else. He's like, if you're looking for teenagers, try the Beach District. So Chosen hurries off, and then Kim just stands there, and then she tells the bouncer dude, she's like, I need a taxi. Tori gets like a drink at the bar. I'm assuming it's like a mocktail. The bartender asks if she has a tab, but then Zara comes up. She's like, oh, I got this round. It's like, my sponsors are paying for this whole trip. And then she's like, you should take some photos so you can remember your one trip to the big time. And Tori's like, maybe I'll take a photo of you on the mat at the finals. And she leans onto her face, knocked out next to all your teeth. And she's like, thanks for the drink. And she walks off. Hawk and Dimitri are like creepily staring at this girl dancing. And she's like on the floor just dancing, kind of, she's looking at them, whatever. But it's like, and Dimitri hits him on the shoulder. He's like, remember, you have a girlfriend. And Hawk's like, yeah, so do you. And then he's like, oh, poop, she's coming over. And so then Dimitri's like, we have girlfriends. We love our girlfriends. So she asks if they're having fun tonight. And he's like, yeah. And then she's like, she looks at Hawk's, or his hair, his mohawk. She's like, oh, I like your hair. It's so cute. He's like, thank you. I have a girlfriend, though. And then she's like, well, to Dimitri, she's like, well, how about you, tall man? You want to dance? And he's like, I thought you'd never ask. And Hawk's like, what? And he's like, I'm on vacation. So it's like, okay, you're kind of a scumbag. Because I don't think his girlfriend would appreciate that. And yeah, it's just dancing, but still, you shouldn't be doing it. Robbie goes up to the bar. He sees Tori and Quan at the other end. Quan, of course, like smirks at him. Then he puts his arm around Tori and whispers in her ear, is your boyfriend better at kissing than he is at fighting? So it's like, hey, Quan, are you interested? Do you want to kiss Robbie? Is that what this is about? Because it seems like he's interested or whatever. So she like knocks his arm off. She's like, stop that. He's like, what? I'm just being friendly. Then the bartender asks Robbie what he can get for him. He's like, can I get a rum and coke?
So he's such a dork. He's like, double, please. So he's like, okay. Amanda's watching a video with like Anthony. They're looking on a computer. Kenny runs up to the porta potty and it's edited, so there's like a countdown. So as soon as he gets in the porta potty, and then it takes off like a rocket. So Anthony laughs. He's like, "Oh, come on!" And she like snaps the laptop shut. She's like, "You should be ashamed." She's like, "I'm ashamed that I have a son that is capable of that kind of bullying." And he's like, "Wait, you think I did this?" She's like, "You've done nothing but mess with him since he's moved here." And Anthony's like, "This wasn't me." She's like, "It is hard enough being a new kid, plus his dad is overseas. His mom works nice, and now he's got to deal with kids being a-holes to him." He's like, "Whoa, Mom." He's like, he's been just as much as a jerk to me. She's like, "We are not keeping score, Anthony. This beef ends today. We need to get Kenny on a plane. The only way that's going to happen is if you apologize." He's like, no way. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't even do, Mom." And she's like scoots the chair that was between them, and she gets close. It's like, "I am not asking. Get in the car." So now Johnny on the plane, he has the dog on his lap, and he's like, "Yeah, this isn't making me feel any better." And then to the dog, he's like, "No offense." So he hands the dog over. She's like, "It's not your fault, Pickles." So he gets up to go to the curtain. He sticks his head, and the flight attendant's like, "Sir, you can't be here." Miguel turns around, and he's like, "Oh my God." So Johnny is like, Miguel. And he puts his headphones on. And he's like, "Miguel," he says louder. The annoying dude from before takes off his headphones and gets up. He's like, "Hey, I'm trying to relax, and you don't belong up here. So go. Or do you want to have a problem?" And Johnny's like, "You're about to have a problem." He like scoffs. He's like, "Try it, pal. I'd love to see you on a no-fly list." And then the flight attendant's like, "Both of you, please sit down." So the dude puts his hands up, and he's like, "Then get him to shut up for me. Better yet, why don't you get me another one of these drinks?" And he calls her over. He's like, Johnny's like, "I'm just trying to talk to my kid, all right? We just had a family emergency. Just want to make sure he's okay." So she goes up to Miguel and asks if she wants to speak to him, and Miguel's like, "No." So she makes Johnny sit, and she closes the curtain. Kim gets out of the cab. These two drunk dudes walk out because they're about to go to another bar or something like that. And she's like, "There's too many teens." Then she yells out, it's like, "Hey." And then they're like, "Oh, nice ponytail." And she's like, "You said you saw teens. See any with matching jackets and snakes on them?" And one dude's like, "Yeah, we did, didn't we?" Then he's like, the other guy's like, "Little blonde girl with some Chinese kids?" It's like, they're not even Chinese, they're Korean. And she's like, "What bar were they at?" The other guy's like, "Well, I'll tell you if you let me take you for a ride, pony." And the first guy laughs. It's like, "Okay, guys are complete scumbags as well." She's like, "Think you can handle it?" And he's like, "Mm-hmm." So he reaches, but she ducks, and before he knows it, so this is such a crazy move. Her foot goes up to his neck, boom, brings him down, pins him down on the ground. So she pulls him down with her foot somehow. And he cries out. She's like, "Let go of me, you psycho." The other guy runs, but then Chosen shows up, pins him down. "Where are the teens?" She's like, "You tell him, I'll break your arm." He's like, "You tell her, I'll break your neck." Then both of them cry out, "Tails, Tapa's bar." Then to Kim, Chosen's like, "First you kidnap Daniel's son, now you go after kids, you bring dishonor to karate." She's like, "You're spewing nonsense." She's like, "Are you drunk again?" He's like, "You missed a whole tournament." He's like, "No, I know truth. Your long-haired goon put Daniel's son in dog cage." And she's like, "Dog cage?" She's like, "Whatever you think happened, Cobra Kai had nothing to do with it." She's like, "I would know." He's like, "Do not be so sure. Maybe Kreese do without you, huh?" And he turns away. He hops on the scooter, and she realizes that he might be right. Sam is walking along the beach, and then she sees the Iron Dragon captain dude, shirtless, practicing moves in the sand. And she's just watching him. And then he sees her. He's kind of surprised. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," because she's staring like a weirdo. And she's like, "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm Sam, by the way." And he's like, "Axel." She's like, "That's a pretty cool kata. What's it called?" I am not supposed to speak with opponent." And she's like, "We're not on the mat. It's pretty late to be training." "Always time for training." He bends down to pick up his shirt or something like that, and she sees some red welts on his back. She's like, "Whoa." And they're kind of these U-shaped marks on there. She's like, "What happened to your back?" He's like, "From bow staff competition." She's like, "No one's been able to land a point on you yet." It's like, "I saw what happened with your sensei." And he's like, "My sensei wants me to be the best. It's because of him I never lose." And she's like, "There are other ways of teaching. I got to admit, your dojo's pretty great. He's like, thank you. And he's like, your dojo's pretty good too. And she's like, we try. And he's like, mind if I join? And she's like, you want to switch dojos? He's like, your walk. I was going back to a hotel. And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, he's going to switch dojos. So Dimitri's still dancing with the girl. Hawk's bored. He FaceTimes his girlfriend, Moon. And she says that she's happy to see his face. She's like, what's up? He's like, oh, nothing. I miss you. Wish you were here. And she's like, I miss you too. And she's like, oh, looks like you're having fun. She's like, where are you? He's like, we're at this little tapas bar. It's pretty cool. I'll show you. So he just like shows her whatever. And she's like, wait, go back. Is that Dimitri? It turns out Dimitri's girlfriend is with Moon. So she like looks at the phone. And she's like, you shady little man whore. Hawk like zips his phone down. He's like, oh poop. So he didn't mean to do it. I mean, he could have seen it, but he didn't try to screw Dimitri over. Robbie orders another rum and coke. Tori's still at the other end. And then she like makes eye contact with him. So she tells Quan, she's like, I'm getting out of here. Dimitri's dancing. His phone buzzes. He's like, he's like, I'll be right back, mi amor. It's like, you're such a dork. It was scumbag. And he's like, saved my spot. So Quan gets right into Robbie's ear. No need to worry. I'll keep her warm tonight. And Robbie stands up, but he has to like look up to him. It's like, I didn't realize that Robbie was that much shorter than him. And he's like, oh, come on, make a move. And he's like, guess I'll just have to kick your ass on the mat then, again. He's like, now excuse me, someone is waiting for me. And Robbie just like sits, go back to his drink. And Zara's like watching, and she starts moving closer. Amanda's sitting in a car. Anthony's at the door, rings the doorbell. And Kenny's like, what the hell do you want? He's like, I'm here to say sorry, I guess, for you pooping your pants, which I had nothing to do with, by the way. But now my mom's blaming me. You must have said something, which if you did, such a witch move. He doesn't say which. And then, thud, Kenny jabs Anthony in the nose. He hits him back in the gut. So Amanda's like on her phone. She looks up, sees them fighting. She's like, fudging karate. So she runs out, gets out, goes up to the porch, separates them. Anthony's like, he hit me first. And Kenny's like, I'll do it again. She's like, oh, stop it. It's like, you can't keep hurting each other. And Kenny's like, I tried to move on. I took a big leap coming to Miyagi-Do just to get humiliated because of him. And Anthony's like, it wasn't me. And Kenny's like, it was you. She's like, enough. Do you realize how stupid this is? It's like, the whole reason a spot is even open in Miyagi-Do is because Miguel's mom is in the hospital. He's on a plane right now, not knowing if she's even going to make it. It's like, yeah, some people have real poop they're dealing with. But if you two can't get past this, then your friends in Spain are going to have to forfeit. It's like, this is never going to end until one of you ends it. It's like, someone is going to have to lose the battle so you can finally end the war, okay? So who's it going to be, huh? And Anthony just like walks away. And then Kenny goes back inside. So she's like, ugh. So on the plane, it's 3 hours and 39 minutes to landing. People are sleeping. Johnny has like the lady's big hat on. Flight attendant walks by, and he gets up. So he goes past the curtain, goes to Miguel. He kneels. He's like, just hear me out. He's like, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more in Barcelona, all right? I saw you killing it out there. I didn't think you needed my support as much as Robbie. He doesn't have what you have. He's not going to college next year. Sakai Takai is the biggest thing that he's got going for him. He's like, but I see how that made you feel. He's like, you're my son too. And Miguel like looks at him and like kind of turns away. It looks like his eyes are kind of teary because, he doesn't have a dad. And, he does care what Johnny thinks. And Johnny's like, as for your mom, he's like, I'm really scared. I love her so much. I tried my best to get myself together, be a good guy, then things like this happen. And it feels like I could lose everything all over again. But the truth is, I don't know if she's going to be okay. But I can't think of the alternative, all right? And Miguel's like, yeah. And then the annoying guy must have been in the bathroom because he comes out, he's like, Jesus. He's like, man, he's like, this ain't hard, okay? I sit up here in the big boy seats, and you go all the way in the back with the lazy losers. And Johnny's like, hey, man, I'm just trying to talk to my kid. He's like, I didn't ask you for your life story. I asked you to go back to where you belong. And I've asked you a few times now, so I'm not asking you again. So then the stewardess is like, stop it. It's like, if there's any violence, I'll have to call the captain. He's like, so call him, sweetheart. And Johnny's like, hey, man, just relax, all right? He's like, yeah,
I'm going to relax, big boss man. He swings up at Johnny, who easily ducks back. Then Miguel stands up, whoosh, smashes the dude in the face. He falls back like on his butt, and people applaud, and they're like, "That's what he deserved." And Johnny tells him, he's like, "That was a great shot." He's like, "Good back knuckle," or something like that. Sam asks Axel what he thinks of Barcelona. He says it reminds him of Koh Samui or something like that. And then she's like, "You've been to Thailand?" He's like, "And Japan, China, Malaysia, India, every country in Europe." She's like, "Okay, yeah, I got it." It's like, other than a couple trips to Disney World, I haven't really been outside of California. But there's so much in the world to see. Barcelona's not a bad place to start. And he's like, "Well, what do you hope to see while here?" And she's like, I mean, everything. And then Quan and the other dude, somehow they come out in front of them, which makes no sense because they were outside long before, unless they were at the beach for, I don't know. And then he's like, "How cute. Little rival team playtime, huh?" And Sam's like, "Just ignore them." So she goes to like walk, and then both like move closer to like cut her off. "Say the magic words." She's like, "Move aside." And he's like, "Wrong." She's like, "Leave us alone." And then someone comes out behind her. So there must be another Cobra Kai. So Quan bends forward and gets in her face. "Only if you say please." You see like Axel clenching his fist. The other dude's like staring at him, so he knows that he's about to do something. But then he makes a move, does a spin kick, like jump, that hit Axel in the chest, but it barely knocks him back. And then they start fighting, and Quan's like, "Come on, hit me." So she kicks the guy that's coming up behind him, and he's like, "Come on, I take you both." He's like, "Come on." The other guy in Korean's like, "We can't get caught." He's like, "Come on." There's like sirens wailing somehow, and Sam tells Axel, like, "We need to go." So Quan's like, "See you on the mat." So Sam and Axel make it back to the beach. So they're both panting. I don't know if they went back to where they started. And she's like, "Cobra Kai." It's like, "Those a-holes." And Axel smiles. "Nice round kick." And she's like, "Nice counter strike. I think the coast is clear." So then he leans closer with his eyes closed. And she's like, "Whoa, whoa." She's like, "No, He's like, I'm sorry. I thought." She's like, "No. I have a boyfriend. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong idea." And he's like, "Already after curfew. I must go. Sorry. Bye." In the elevator at the hotel, Dimitri's like, "I can't believe you ratted me out to Yas." It's like, "She dumped me." Because like, "This is not my fault." It's like, "You were the one dancing with another girl." And Dimitri's like, "You just can't handle that she wanted me over you." And he's like, "What are you talking about? I turned her down." No, it's fine. Obviously you're jealous. But to ruin my relationship over it, that is a new low, even for you. Devin's like in the elevator with them, just like silently like watching them, whatever. Then Hawk's like, "Okay, no one," they get out of the elevator and they're in the hall. He's like, "Okay, no one here is jealous. If you don't like facing consequences, maybe don't do poopy things." And Dimitri just gives him like a double bird and darts off. And Hawk says to Devin, he's like, "Some people cannot take any damn accountability." And she's like, "Right, accountability." Because she hasn't taken accountability for what she did. So then it's like nighttime. Amanda's sitting with Kenny outside. She apologized for yelling. And she's like, "There's just a lot going on." He's like, I know you're trying to make things right, but I don't know if I can ever get over everything that's gone down." And she's like, "Grudges are hard to overcome. But you know what's also hard? Becoming an elite karate fighter, which you did faster than anyone I know. And I know a lot of people in karate." He's like, "It's not just about Anthony. Truth is, I don't know if I could face everyone else again." And she's like, "You got embarrassed. It sucks. But at some point, you're going to have to see them. So go show them that you are not poop butt. You are Kenny Payne, a member of the dojo that, with your help, is going to win the Sekai Takai." And he's like, "I guess it'd be pretty cool to come back a world champion." She's like, "Yes, it would." So then Anthony walks up. He's like, "Hey, Mom, give us a minute." And so he's like, "Listen, man, I swear on my life, I did not dose you, but I've been enough an a-hole that I see why you think it was me." And Kenny's like, "It's fine." He's like, "No, it's not. Since I started this war, it's on me to end it, which is why I'm going to poop my pants." And he holds up a bottle of like the poop medicine. And then Kenny's phone buzzes. He tells Anthony, he's like, "Give me a second. It's Devin." And she's like, "Hey, Kenny, I heard you might come to Barcelona, which is awesome, but there's something I need to tell you. I'm the one who put the laxatives in your drink." He's like, "What?" She's like, I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. I was just feeling so much pressure." And he's like, "Hey, can we talk about this when I get there? I really got to go." And she's like, Yes, of course." And the call ends. So he turns back to Anthony, who's chugging away again Gatorade. And he's like, how long does it take this stuff to kick in? And Kenny's like, I don't know, dude, but you better go. You're going to want home field advantage. He's like, okay, cool. We good? And Kenny's like, we're good. He's like, cool. Mom, start the car, please. But it's like, when's the next part of the tournament? He's like, how long is it? Whatever. At a Barcelona club, Chosen asked the bartender if he saw American Kids, one with hawk hair. And he's like, yeah, a little while ago. And he asked if they got into a fight. And dude says, not that he saw. So Kim comes in next to him. And Chosen's like, worry for nothing. And then she's like, looks that way. And he's like, what do you call headlock move you use on idiot tourist? And she's like, as if I'd give away my secrets to the enemy. And Chosen's like, I am not the enemy. She's like, oh, that's right. Your enemy is the orchid. Because he was smashing the plants when he was upset. She's like, I assumed that was about a girl. And he's like, no, talk about it. And she's like, why not? Chosen doesn't like girls? He's like, I never said that. And Kim's like, she must have really broken your heart if you let a little flower take you down. And he's like, nothing take me down. And she's like, I bet I could. He's like, you would not last 1 second and fight with me, eh? She's like, let's find out. So then, whoosh, whoosh, they start like fighting, blocking, whatever, twisting arms back, whatever. Then they're like kind of like locked together. And then they start kissing. And the crowd cheers and whoops. It's like, what? Robbie comes out of Zara's room. It's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, my head is pounding. It's like, I barely remember last night. So he probably didn't do anything, but he... And she's like, well, good thing I do. And then she gives him a kiss. This is like kind of silly. She gives him a kiss just as the elevator door dings. Door opens. Tori's inside. Perfect view of them kissing right there. Elevator's right by her door. And Robbie just like turns, goes the other way without realizing that she's there. Then Zara turns and sees Tori because there's no way she could have planned this like perfect timing. So she sees Tori and she just like blows a kiss to her and goes back in the room. So that's not going to be good. Johnny and Miguel get a ride to the hospital by a cop. Miguel thanks him the cop thanks him for their bravery having to deal with a drunk a-hole on the flight. Tells Miguel, he's like, I hope everything's all right with your mom. And Miguel like thanks him for driving them. They go to the nurse station, ask what room she's in. The nurse tells her, but then she's like, wait. They go to room, but there's like an orderly or like someone like just changing the sheets, which is like covered in blood. And Johnny's like, where's the woman whose room this is? And the person just like looks at him. Miguel asks in Spanish, ¿Dónde está Carmen? And the lady's like, no, sorry. And Miguel asks Johnny, he's like, was she in this room? You said that she was going to be okay. And Johnny pulls him to hug. And they're like crying and like, what's going on? What happened? And then Carmen's brought in a wheelchair and she calls out to them. She's like, what are you doing here? So the nurse is like, they had to do an emergency cerclage. So they were worried for a few hours, but she's a fighter, the baby too. She just needs to stay on bed rest for the next few weeks. So they're relieved. Then later she's lying in bed. She's like, I can't believe you flew all the way back. Johnny's like, I'm never leaving you again. And Carmen's like the baby, like, she's so lucky to have you as a dad. Plus, no one is going to mess with a girl whose big brother won the Sakai Takai. And Johnny's like, wait, what do you mean? She's like, you heard the doctor. I'm fine now, really. I just need to rest. Mama's here. There'll be nothing for you to do. So you and Miggy need to go back to Spain. And Miguel's like, Mom, we just got here. She's like, karate is what brought us together. And this is your big chance, Miguel. Go back and finish what you started. Both of you. Just promise me one thing. Win. Win. So at breakfast, or like outside a cafe, Chosen Kim are just sitting there. She like pours some sand like out of her sleeve or whatever. Her ponytail's gone. Her hair is just down. And she's like, obviously this stays between us. And Chosen's like, agreed. No one can know what happened on the beach. One time thing. Well, two if we count morning. And she's like, from here on out, we must remain professional. He's like, yes, what happened in Barcelona, stay in Barcelona. Then he gets bumped by a long-haired dude getting coffee that comes out of a cafe. His arm, he's shirtless, sleeves, whatever, and he has a Cobra tattoo. And Cho's like, goon with long hair, he with you? She's like, I've never seen him before. And Cho's like, but Sensei Kreese has. So they both get up. Daniel like comes down off an elevator. He sees Chosen. He's like, what's the big emergency? Then Kim pops out into view. What's she doing here? And Chosen's like, we just crossed paths by mistake. And she's like, mistake?
So Joe's like, we found man who kidnapped you. Follow him here. Then Kreese comes around the corner. Ugh. Well, well, well. The gang's all here. What's this all about? And Joe says to Kim, like, you called Kreese? She's like, of course I did. I have questions of my own. You know, I haven't forgotten about yesterday's assault. Actions have consequences, Daniel. And Daniel's like, as you're about to find out. And Chosen's like, let's go. So Daniel and Chosen leave. The others follow them. Then down this like hall, they see the long-haired goon. And Daniel's like, there he is. And Chosen's like, now we get answered. So this other guy like talks to him like off camera. He's like, nice job. You got them running scared. And Daniel's like, hey, wait. Like, Sensei Wolf, you sent this thug to kidnap me? Why? So the other sensei there. And then off camera, because Danny boy, Terry freaking Silver is in a hot tub. He smirks at them all. What would life be without a few surprises? And then he takes a toke on a cigar, and they all just like staring at him. So somehow he got out of jail too. So Silver is working with this other sensei dude. I'm pretty sure it was the Iron Wolf sensei. And then they paid this guy, must have paid him to get a Cobra Kai tattoo and to kidnap Daniel and to get all this stuff messed up. But see, again, I'm going to say it again. I keep saying it. This is why ending right there, it's like, what the crap does this mean? What's going to happen next? Now we got to wait a week.
Okay, so I managed to squeeze in some time to watch the first episode of Creature Commandos. So we'll talk about probably episode 2, and maybe episode 3 next week, because they come out on Thursdays, which, it's going to be, we'll see if I can keep up with it or whatever. So episode 1, the Collie Wobbles. What did I think about this? So I saw James Gunn posted like a bunch of screenshots of early reviews and were they all the reviews or were they hand selected? Because all of the reviews, pretty much everyone loved it, and I thought the first episode was okay. My problem with it, art is good. Obviously, we got the actual actors, but when you have an actor, acting and voice acting, I feel are two different things. So it almost feels like James Gunn is being selected. It's great that he wants to have that continuity. So if he's going to do like a live action Rick Flag, then he has to think about who's going to be live action Rick Flag, Frank Grillo. So then Frank Grillo should do the voice. That makes sense. But just because you could be an awesome actor doesn't necessarily mean you can be an awesome voice actor, because it's a whole different. I have huge respect for voice actors, and I've interviewed so many of them over the years, and it bums me out when Hollywood, and I'm not just talking about James Gunn, but Hollywood in general, they're like, let's get a big name celebrity to do a voice. But it's like, I get why you're doing it for the market, and I don't always agree with it. And I'm not going to get into like what I think of Chris Pratt, but when you're getting Chris Pratt to voice Garfield, who's interested in it? I don't feel like the kids that want to see a Garfield movie care. Do they even know? Maybe they know who Chris Pratt is. Maybe they're probably like, oh, that sounds like Mario. I want to see that. Maybe they recognize that. I don't know. But I just feel like the voice actors, they're trained for this. And live action actors, while I'm not saying they can't or they're not capable, they don't have the skills to be a voice actor, but that's not like their expertise. And maybe they do some training. Maybe there's a voice director to help them along. But I don't know. What it comes down to is I feel like there are a lot of voice actors who are basically losing their jobs because it's all about, we need the big name celebrity. And I don't think that's necessarily always the best thing. But with what James Gunn is doing, there is an agenda. It's not a bad agenda. That's what his agenda. That's his plan, that he wants to have the same actors to have that consistency. And I agree with that to an extent, because it's always annoying when you see like some sort, like in the past we've had like Marvel adaptions and they have a totally different voice actor because the celebrity is not available. And, but that could be a different thing. So we have this. So we got the voice. So I was like, where am I going with this? Why am I on this rant? With this first episode, I think my main thing, so aside from that, I mean, the voice, everything sounded good. I don't care about the characters. And that's like a hard sell for me. If you're like, let's do a Flash cartoon, let's do a Superman, let's do a Batman, Wonder Woman, any like characters that we know and love, then yeah, I'm going to be like super excited about this. So the challenge for me personally with this show is, they need to make me care about these characters. I'm so kind of bummed that Rick Flag Jr. was killed off, and I get we're going to see repercussions from that. We've seen a tiny bit of that, but Rick Flag Sr., I mean, I can't even tell you, I could probably count the Rick Flag Sr. stories I've read on one hand. I don't think it's been very often. And that's just my thing. But other people might be like, oh, yeah, I've been reading forever. I read everything, so I know all about Rick Flag. Rick Flag never came across the comics that I read. But I'm curious to see where this is going to go. But yeah, so the first episode, so that's just my thoughts. So it's off to a good start. I'm not like coming down on it. I'm just not super duper excited about it because I don't care about the characters. I do want to see where this is going to go. Yeah, so we'll see. And the fact, even if it's like Amanda Waller related, and I don't like Amanda Waller as a character, I kind of despise her because she's despicable. We're not supposed to like her. So it's just, for me, overall, it's kind of a hard sell. But all that being said, at least Rick Flag isn't like a scumbag character. So, it does seem like there's some good in him. So that could be the redeeming part of this team of, monsters. And maybe they're not all monsters. So the first episode, we see Waller and Rick Flag Sr. They're watching a news report about a battalion calling themselves the Sons of Themyscira. They're violently trying to cross the border into Pakistan or something like that. They're said to be working for the rogue Amazonian and reputed sorceress. They say it's Circe. I always thought it was Circe, but I think now I'm questioning my memory. I'm pretty sure they said Circe. So she claims to be the rightful heir of the throne to the perhaps mystical, perhaps real, all-female island nation of Themyscira. Inside sources say Circe has promised the sons, once the downfall of Pakistan has been achieved, she will lead them to conquer Themyscira. And, we see some videos of some like bros or whatever. They're like, oh, they got like the most wonderful waterfalls. Why should women only get beautiful waterfalls or something like that? It's like, whatever, dude. So Waller tells Flag that Princess Ilana Rostovic, this is the heir apparent to Pakistan, is already negotiating with the U.S. with their oil. So if she's overthrown by some nut job in a witch's hat, then all bets are off. So basically, the U.S. government cares because they want their oil. So that's why they're going to send Rick and his team there. So he reaches sub-basement level, and there's this vault that's labeled Non-Human Internment Division. And Flag's like, I thought Congress put a stop to all the Task Force X activities since your daughter outed you. So that happened in Peacemaker Season 1. Was it Peacemaker? Why does it not sound right? It is Peacemaker, the John Cena show. I always question everything. I was like, my brain starts like turning off, and it's like, no, that's not. Well, you're crazy. So it's again great with the continuity, because what I'm pretty sure they've stated is that like Peacemaker Season 1 is all canon except for the Justice League scene at the end. Spoiler: if you haven't watched Season 1, you should. So then she's like, technically, Congress said Argus can't use incarcerated human beings as mission operatives any longer. But what about beings that aren't human? And he's like, huh? So then they overlook this big common area where there's inmates in there. And he's like, what in the holy hell? She's like, this is the Belle Reve Non-Human Internment Division. For over 50 years, only those at the uppermost levels of security clearance are aware of its existence. By using these prisoners, I think we can arguably circumvent our new restrictions. And he's like, how? She's like, Congress said we can't use human prisoners, but these a-holes aren't human. So he's like, well, what about that one? And she's like, is a corpse human? And Flag's like, who is she? And Waller says that they don't know. They call her the bride. And then, of course, she flips off the camera because that's so edgy. It's like, oh, it's a cartoon and someone's pointing the middle finger. Like, whatever. So it's basically like she's like the bride of Frankenstein, if you know the character or whatever. And she talks about a psychopath who calls himself Dr. Phosphorus. He has irradiated skin that he can use to burn through people and objects. And then Rick's like, well, how does that radiation affect the people around him? And she's like, if you don't sleep in the same room with him, the effects should be minimal. And he's like, minimal? And she's like, consider it a free vasectomy. So then he's like, what is that thing? So it's Weasel. She's like, it's one of the few soldiers still alive from Project Starfish and Corto Maltese, which we saw in the Suicide Squad. So again, we got some continuity there. And she's like, so we know it has what it takes to survive. And then Flag kind of flinches at the mention of the mission, whatever. And that it's the only one that's like, it has what it takes to survive. And she's like, sorry, I didn't mean to intimate anything about your son, Flag. When he died in Corto Maltese, he died as a hero. But he died because she ordered Peacemaker to, so whatever. She's horrible. And he's like, that one looks like a discontinued dishwasher. She's like, that dishwasher killed over 300 Nazis in World War II. I would have dismantled it, but I thought it might come in use someday. It is known as GI Robot. And she's like, and that one is Nina Mazursky. He's like, what use is she walking around with a fishbowl? So she's kind of like a fish creature, whatever, with a thing over her head. And Amanda's like, get her in water, and it's a different story. She's the smartest and most reasonable of the bunch. She might be able to help you keep the rest of them in line. So then they head down to the common area as the big vault doors open. Phosphorus, Bride, and Weasel charge at them, snarling. Flag pulls out his gun, but then they all get zapped, including G.I. Robot and Mazursky, Nina. So Amanda has her thumb on her device. It looks like a phone, whatever, that can detonate the implants, but I guess it doesn't blow him up. It just shocks him. She's like, this is our new task force, Flag. And she tosses him to control. Let's call it Task Force M. M for monster. Also known as, and we get the intro Creature Commandos with the music and all that stuff. So she tells the Flag and Hall that they'll be going straight to the castle to protect Princess Rostovik from Cersei and her forces. Once they're on the transfer plane, he's talking to them. He's like, I know you all aren't exactly enthusiastic about this mission. Dr. Phosphorus is like, General, I believe you have read us wrong. We're delighted to be here and delighted to serve our country. He's like, okay, great. And then Bride asks Phosphorus, she's like, are you smiling? He's like, yes. And she's like, sarcastically? Mm-hmm. So they arrive. The sons notice like military transport, like going to the castles. So they make some comments about it, whatever. Weasel's like peeing in the ride, and Phosphorus is like, is he peeing? He's peeing. Why is he peeing? It's getting my leg. It's like, okay, funny, haha. He's peeing in the van or whatever truck. They walk into the castle. Flag's eyes go wide when he sees a princess, and she flips her blonde hair, so she's like young and pretty, whatever. And she says it's wonderful to meet them. He says it's an honor. He bows, and then her security chief, he's like, that is not how we bow here. So unfortunately, I have to kill you. And then all the like guards, soldiers, whatever, in these big armored battle suits. So they like point their arms. These like guns pop out, are all pointing at them. Riggs like, wait, whoa. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, no one briefed me on what kind of bow. And then Alexei starts laughing. Princess like, oh, they're messing on you. And Alexei's like, I was just messing with them for a minute. They're about to mess their pants. And Rick's like, no, I wasn't. And Bride's like, he was very close to messing his pants. He's like, I was nowhere even in the neighborhood of that. So Lexi's like, we are so much like Americans, yes? Oh, we pull pranks like Jamie Kennedy experiment, which I love that show. He's like, we do the Super Bowl shovel. I think he said shovel. That's what closed caption said shovel. He's like, and we like to say, what's up? And Phosphorus like, well, you're certainly current with your popular cultural references. He's like, thank you. And he's like, you're welcome. And into Pride, he's like, sarcastic smile. So then Alexi's like, now I have a question for you, Skeleton. Where's the beef? Ha ha ha. Clara Peller is like one of the greats. And the prince is like, enough, Alexei. So she says they prepared a banquet for them because they're their honored guests. The others are eating pretty much like slobs and everything. Flag kind of face palms. He tells the princess that they've been living on prison grub for a while. So he's like, forgive their manners, your highness. And she's like, just Ilana is fine. It's like, we don't stand on ceremony here. He's like, okay, sure. And she's like, you've sampled this prison grub? He's like, just seeing it is enough to give me the collie wobbles, which is the name of the episode, your highness, Ilana. And then she laughs. She's like, their manners do not bother me. I love seeing friends enjoying themselves. And then there's this woman like groaning or sleeping in his chair with like a crown. She's like, that is the queen. Poor sweet mother. She has not been self for some time for a long time now, or something like that. Then Nina asks G.I. Robot, would you like anything? And she calls her butler, is like, can we get some diesel? Later outside, Princess like is tossing a bone for Weasel to fetch. Nina says, Robot, like, it is a beautiful evening, isn't it? And he's like, I do not enjoy landscapes devoid of dead Nazis, Miss Nina. Can Miss Nina and G.I. Robot be killing Nazis soon? Miss Waller promised it would be soon. It has been oh so long since G.I. Robot has sent Nazis back to hell where they belong. And she's like, I think it will be soon. G.I. Robot would like to kill Nazis with you. Would you like to kill Nazis with G.I. Robot? And she's like, if I were to kill Nazis with anyone, it would most certainly be with you. Oh, G.I. Robot has been waiting for 74 years, 23 days, and 52 minutes. So then Ilana sits next to Rick, and he says he hopes that they aren't, too much of an intrusion. Their only goal is to keep them safe. And she says she's happy to have the company. And he's like, even that one? Weasel grabs like this guy sitting there, and he like kind of drags him away. She laughs, and then she's like, why was he in prison? And Rick's like, oh, supposedly murdered 27 children. And she's like, oh. And he's like, he hasn't shown any violent tendencies since then, so I wouldn't fret. I also would invite the school choir to the castle while he's here. And she's like, oh no, I like American music. Rock and roll. And she's like, but yeah, I am happy for the company, especially the company of Americans. My country is a charming one, but it is backwards, always rejecting progress as corrupt. It is my most cherished dream to lead my people to the 21st century. He's like, well, I've been there. I'm not sure I'd recommend it. And she's like, are you married, Richard Flagg? He's like, no. I was once, but my wife ended up being my least favorite aspect of that 21st century you're gung-ho about. And she's like, oh, I will avoid that part of the 21st century then. He's like, well, sometimes missteps lead you where you need to be. She and I had a son when we were just 18. Fine young man. I joined the military mostly just to make money so I could support him. 18 years later, he joined the military because he loved our country and he wanted to make it a better place. He's like, yeah, boy was an improvement on me in every way. And she's like, was? And Rick's like, he passed on about 2 years back. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Rick's like, I would have liked to introduce the two of you. I have a feeling you would have gotten on like a house on fire. And she chuckles, a house on fire does not seem good. He's like, no, it's supposed to be a good thing. And she's like, I'm sure your son was a fine man, but I'm much more fond of older men. I'd like to show you something. And then so they go somewhere. She's like, this armoire is beautiful, no? And he's like, sure. It is over 500 years old. What is it you wanted to show me, Ilana? Just this wonderful armoire. Whoosh, she takes off her gown, drops to the floor. He turns to that's not an armoire. Listen, Ilana. Yes, I don't think this is exactly ethical. I'm here to protect you, to protect me from loneliness, from lack of passion. And she like pushes him on the bed. From Pakistani men who have never seen the world, have no clue how to treat a woman, who can't see me as a human being. I'm behind the veil of royalty. And he's like, closer, but still, no. Look, I think we need to get some shut-eye so we can put a cogent plan in place in the morning. I'll leave G.I. Robot to guard the door. So later, he's lies in bed flipping through his phone. G.I. Robot stands outside the door listing like the number of Nazis he killed each month and like where, what city or town or what country. Weasel sleeping at his feet. Dr. Phosphorus like sitting at his bed. He's just looking at his glowing hand. The bride's staring out the window. Nina's in a bathtub. She goes underwater. And then Nina hears something. She gets out and she sees the bride exiting the window. And she hops down from the rooftop to rooftop until she reaches the ground because like they're in this big castle or whatever. Then the door opens behind her and Nina comes out like putting on her suit. And the bride's like, how did you get down here so fast? And she's like, I walked down the stairs. And bride's like, no one tried to stop you? And Nina's like, we're here to protect them. Why would they stop me? And she's like, hey, you can't leave. Why not? Well, Flagg will use a remote to shock you, and then we all get shocked. It seems like a flaw in the system to get shocked even when I didn't do anything wrong. That was the worst feeling ever. And she's like, oh, grow a pair of fish? A pair of what? Wait, where are you going? She knocks on this door, and she's like, open door. And there's this little like window thing opens up. The guard's like, he's like, I do not have you on my schedule. And she's like, I do not need a schedule, Sir Duchalat. I am not your prisoner. So open the freaking door. He hesitates, but then he opens it. And Nina's like, bride, please, come on, stay. Oh, darn it. The bride asks the guard if he has any money. And she's like, cough up some cash. He's like, I don't have any freaking rubles on me. How am I supposed to get around? And the guy's like, money is not called ruble. And she's like, yes, I know. It was meant to be insulting. Just give me some cash. So then he like starts like counting out some money. She just takes it all. And Nina's like, that was rude. She's like, you asked him for money and just took it? She's like, we should go back. And this cab pulls up. Bride is like, no one is making you go. And she gets on. She's like, ah. Inside, she speaks to the driver. She says something, but then something Frankenstein. And the driver says something. And she's like, do not worry about what is on her head. Just go to the address I gave you. So they drive, and then they go like past this like seedy looking part of town because there's like all these people outside, whatever. Rick is still sleeping, fell asleep with the phone in his hand. Phosphorus is like going through his drawers. He wakes up, he found the device. Rick kicks him and the device falls on the floor. They both like look at it, they run for it. Phosphorus starts like burning things with his touch. Like the bed catches on fire. Rick tries putting it out with a pillow, but then he's still fighting, then the floor is on fire. Then, they're going back and forth and stuff like that. But then the floor collapses because of all the flames. They end up falling into the kitchen. Like, so there's some staff in there. They run. The device falls in a teacup. Rick reaches for it, but then Phosphorus grabs his wrist and burns it. More fighting. It kind of goes back and forth. One gets it, then the other one gets it. It was like that. Rick had put on like an oven mitt, so he can hit him and stuff like that. He finally gets the device, and Phosphorus cringes back, and he like begs. He's like, no. And Ileana comes in. She's like, Richard? And then Rick's like, Phosphorus, you idiot. You think Waller would give me the only remote? You'd be hopping around like a Mexican jumping bean for days if you escaped. Or if I told her about this. He's like, I'm not here to torture you. We're supposed to be on the same damn team. Meanwhile, the cab arrives at this address, so they both get out. There's this big gate, big house. And Nina's like, what is this place? And the bride's like, where I was born. Like flashbacks, her getting zapped to life or whatever. And then there's this little cottage. There's like a peasant woman inside. She sees them. She takes a phone out of a drawer, and I think it was Zac Efron as a screensaver, but it was like a real picture, even though it's an animated show. She calls. There's like maybe like 5 or 6 numbers in there. She calls the last one. So then we see some guy like on a yacht with some girls dancing in bikini. There's a guy in the shadows. And she says in some other language, she's like, yes, sir. Yes, I am sorry to disturb you, sir. This is, what do you have for me, old woman? He says in the other language. And she's like, oh, as you have asked, sir, I have been keeping watch. And the one you asked me to look for, I think she's here now at the manor. He stands up and in English, my bride, after all these years, I found you. So it's Frankenstein, and he's like in a Hawaiian shirt. So if you know the Frankenstein character from DC, we're going to see him in the second episode, I assume. That is the end of the first episode. So, like I said, it was fine. Yeah, I like if I stop watching it now, I maybe I'd regret it later. But yeah, I wasn't completely blown away. But that is just me. So if you like, if you're excited, that is great. I will continue to watch this, and I will try to keep any snarky comments to myself.
All right, Silo Season 2, Episode 4, The Harmonium. So this is my current favorite show. I love the show. I'm so fascinated with this, and every once in a while we find out little more details, because like I've always wondered, what is the story? What's the background story of the silos? How long have they been there? Part of it feels like they've been, it's been around for a while. But one of the things I thought about is like, what if this is happening like in current days, current time, where these people are locked in a silo. They think the world is a wasteland, but maybe it's really not. Maybe they're just on some crazy private land where someone built this, and they own like some acres of land, and they can just build this silo underground, and no one knows about it. And since they're so underground, if a plane flies overhead, they're not going to hear it and everything. But we get little with the way the last season ended and what they said in the last week's episode, even the beginning. The fact that there's 50 silos, and we get more of a timeline here. So. Yeah, there's while we're getting answers, there's still more questions, and that's something that comes up here. So it starts off the dude that was in the vault and the other silo that Nichols, that Juliet went to. So Solo's talking about, because Juliet needs to figure out how she can get a new suit, where she can, she needs to get to the underwater part. But Solo's he's just like talking on and on and on. He's talking about the circus and trapeze artists and animals and everything like that, because she's trying to make this breathing device thing. And he's like, you're good at making things. And he asks me, what was your job at your silo? And she's like, oh, I was an engineer. And then he says, it's like, oh, they used to have machines to help them breathe underwater in the before times. And he's like, oh, I remember this book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And I think he refers to her as Captain Nemo later and stuff like that. And then he starts to describe the ocean and, because they're in this underwater ship. She's like, oh, I know. She's like, I've seen it. She's seen the ocean. She's like, in a book. And he's like, they let you read books in 18? Because she was in Silo 18. And Juliet's like, no. He's like, and he's like, he continues about the, 20,000 Leagues Under Sea. And then she's like, can you just stop? She's like, because she's trying to focus and she's trying to concentrate and everything. Then he's like, hey, you can use a harmonium. And she's like, what? She's like, no. He's like, it's a musical instrument. She's like, no, I need something to write on. I need a piece of Slater. He's like, well, there's a chalkboard, whatever, in like the same room as that. He's like, come on, I'll show you. Then we see Knox. He's talking to Shirley. So they're like in that secret tunnel place, where they can like hide out. And he's like, when we were kids, I used to think that there's a bunch of names written on the walls. He's like, I used to think these were the names of the founders. He's like, now I think there are people from Mechanic who died in the rebellions. He's like, I think the rebellion we grew up hearing about was just the last one. And before that, they happened every generation. And Shirley like, and you don't want Mechanical to start another one? And he's like, if we started any of them, he's like, look, all right. So he's like, look what they wrote next to the names. And so it started with food shortage in the farms. And then he's like, it looks like blamed on Mechanical. He's like, you see? He's like, factory workers shut down, trash chute fire. He's like, and look at this. Look, it's hard to see, but he's like, no matter where rebellion started, finger always pointed at Mechanical. He's like, why? Why is that? And she's like, because we can shut this fudge down. And he's like, that's right. So she's like, you're not ready for that, us shutting it down. And he's like, if it gets us what we really need, and if we exhausted all our, she's like, they killed Cooper. He's like, I know. He's like, and they sent Jules out to clean. He's like, but Cheryl, he's like, other than revenge, like, what do we want? And she's like, the truth. And then he's like, so let's demand it. He's like, I'm the head of Mechanical. He's like, I can get a meeting with the mayor. So we take a small group, you, me, Walker, and maybe McLean, head of supply. That's the lady that got the tape for Walker. He's like, and we go up. It's like, no crowd, no weapon. And Shirley, like, every step we take will be considered an act of aggression. And he's like, which is why we send a message to the mayor first, laying out exactly what we want to talk about. And then Shirley's like, not the mayor, the judge. And he's like, Jules told Walker it's an empty role. And Shirley's like, but the silo doesn't know that. As far as everyone's concerned, Judge Meadows is the boss. And he's like, okay. And Shirley's like, okay. He's like, I'll send her the message. Sims asks Bernard if it's true a gang from Mechanical is going to talk to the judge. And Bernard's like, hardly a gang. And Sims like, let me stop them. He's like, I have 50 raiders on 110. And Bernard's like, no, Rob, we're going to let them air their grievances. Maybe it'll bring down the temperature. The ultimate goal is to stop a rebellion. I don't care how. And Sims like, every level they climb is one level closer to the airlock. What happens if they rush the stairs? And Bernard's like, two of this gang are old ladies. It's like, they're not going to make a run for the airlock, but put some raiders above judicial if you want. And it seems like this isn't the only reason the judge concerned me. It's like, she also agreed to meet with Lucas Kyle. He requested a hearing about his sentence. So that's the dude that was like mapping out the stars, that talked to Juliet before she was sent out. And that he like helped her and everything like that before she got busted. So it was like, if she lets him go, that's not good. And Bernard's like, I agree. He's like, what do you want me to do about it? And Sim's like, I was hoping you could have a word with her. He's like, I know you've been talking to her. And Bernard's like, you've been tracking that? And Sim's like, just an observation. So then Bernard's like, well, next time I speak with her, I'll be sure to raise your concerns. And then he just like keeps walking and leaves Sims behind. So then Bernard goes to talk to Meadows. And he's like, you agreed to meet with some mechanicals? And she's like, they're citizens of the silo who want to speak to their judge. And he's like, it sends a bad message. And she's like, no, Bernard, it sends a new message. He's like, you also agreed to hear Lucas Kyle's petition? And she's like, he has a right to request a review. And he's like, and you have a right to refuse it. She's like, what are you so afraid of? And Bernard's like, he's dangerous. And she's like, well, now I really want to meet him. And Bernard's like, I'm being serious. She's like, no, you're not. Because if you were, you would have brought me my cleaning suit. Do you have it? And he's like, it's being assembled. And she's like, well then, when you have my suit, we can talk. Juliet and Solo go to this other room, and she's like, what are all these numbers like on the chalkboards? And he says, like, I have no idea. He's like, erase them. He's like, I don't think anyone would mind. And there's like some art on the walls and stuff like that. He's like, it was a week before Founders Day when it all happened. He's like, did you have Founders Day in your silo? And she's like, no. He's like, did you have any holidays? And Juliet's like, we had Freedom Day. He's like, what did that celebrate? And she's like, freedom? And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. And there's like some backpacks or something like hanging on the walls. He recognizes this name, Lapis. He's like, oh, I used to sit, she used to sit next to me. She was a funny girl, always making noises, cracking me up. Then he talks about like her mom and like the meaning of her name or whatever like this is like the color. And Juliet's like, this is a level B classroom? He's like, mm-hmm. So Juliet's like, so she would have been 11 or 12 when the rebellion started? So how were you sitting next to her? And he's like, well, I didn't mean that this belonged to Lapis. And then she's like, what happened to your eye? Did that happen during the rebellion? Because he's got like a scar or whatever. And then he's like, yeah, that's something I don't like to talk about. But then he gets excited. He's like, oh, do you see? He's like, have you seen something like this? He's like, can I show you? Then Billings' wife's like talking about, she's like, I can pack more ginger in case you're gone longer or whatever, because she's worried about people coming up also. And he says there's only a few people that the judge agreed, and he trusts her. He's like, if she wants, he could ask the deputies to stay. She's like, I don't want a deputy, I want you. So Billings, Peter, he's like, if I can help keep the peace down there, then none of us will have anything to worry about. He's like, I'll ask somebody to stop by, and I'll come back as soon as I can. So down below, McLean comes up to Knox, Walker, and Shirley. And there's this other dude there. I forget his name. He asks if she's got them. And she's like, well, my dogs are pissed, but yeah, I got them. And she pats her back. So we don't know what she's talking about yet. The other dude says, he's like, anyone can do this. He's like, let me go, for Coop. And Knox says that they said 4 people, not 5. And McLean says that she could stay there, sleep in her own bed, catch them on the way down. Walker's like, suit yourself. But she ends up going. Sim's wife says that, Meadows wasn't always a drunk. When she was in judicial, she heard some stories about her mind, it's the best there ever was. Then something happened, and she never heard what. And, Sim says that he has a thought. He's like, this might be a step too far, but the pact outlines 3 grounds for impeaching a judge: proven misbehavior, incapacity to act, or, and then she finishes with him, endangering the silo. So then she's like, impeachment? That could be very destabilizing. And Sim's like, or it could unite the upper half. I'll need support from a majority of levels and departments. I don't know if there's time to gather signatures. And she's like, you don't need signatures. You only need the threat of impeachment to send a message to Bernard. He's the one sidling her. If he does, maybe he goes back to seeking your counsel. So he's looking at how to screw things up for the judge just so he can get his in, which is kind of crappy. So Solo's playing some songs, and I couldn't quite put so the harmonium is kind of like this keyboard thing. I don't know you probably know what it is. Maybe you know what it is. But he's playing some song, and I couldn't quite place it. Is this a Beatles song? I don't know. But he's playing, and Juliet asks him to stop, but he's like, no. He's like, you have to listen. And she says that she's trying to figure things, the breathing thing out. He's playing music. He's like, how do you think that I'm playing the music? And she's like, I don't care. So he stops. He's like, yes, you do. He's like, I'm just trying to show you something. He's like, would you come over here, please? Just one time, and I won't mention it again. I promise. So she goes over, and she's like, just play. So he's like, okay. And he's like, look at my hands. Look at my feet. She's like, yeah. He's like, see? He's like, there's a bellows inside that pushes air through a valve. You could use this to push air down a tube. So he's playing. She looks closely, looks down, from a different angle. Then says that she's going to have to take it apart. He stops playing, and then she's like, what? And he's like, yeah, but you could put it back together again, right? And Juliet's like, I don't know, maybe. Why don't you just play one last time, okay? He's like, oh, man. And she's like, well, we'll see. So the judge talks to Lucas. There's a couple raiders, standing on either side of him. And she's like, when a team of agents approached Nichols' apartment, she's like, you fled, is that correct? He's like, yes, but, and then she's like, there it is again. Yes, but. Yes, I held a red level relic, but it wasn't in my possession. If you don't deny the facts of your case, Mr. Kyle, why are you requesting a review of your sentence? And he's like, and she's like, let me guess. The reason, put simply, is it's not fair. Would that be accurate? And then she holds up a metal tin. She's like, what is this made of? And he's like, metal. And where do we get the ore to make the metal? He's like, the mines. She's like, the mines are critical to our survival, but the work is hard and it's dangerous and nobody wants to do it. So you have to do it. You and others like you who have fallen afoul of the pact. Just because you'll be wearing yellow coveralls doesn't mean that you won't be a vital service to the silo. And then he's like, may I ask you a question? And she's like, if you must. He's like, why did you even grant this request for a review? Meadows like, agents, get out. So the two raiders leave. And she's like, why do you think? And he's like, to see if I knew what was on the hard drive? And she's like, no. I wanted to know about the lights in the night sky. What are they? He's like, I don't know. And she's like, tell me what you think you know. So he's like, they move. Actually, we move. And she's like, we move? She's like, what do you think that means? So he's like, I think we live on a ball. And he picks up an apple off her desk. He's like, a massive one, and it rotates, giving impressions that the lights move, but they don't. It's the same with the sun. It doesn't move, we do. We spin, and that gives us day and night. So she takes the apple from him, and she's like, the lights in the sky are called stars, and they are massive spheres of gas, and they shine from an energy called radiation, which makes them perpetual balls of fire. He kind of like laughs, and she's like, and you're right. The world rotates and revolves around the sun, and the sun is just one of billions of these stars. And he's like, how do you know this? And wait, are there actually other worlds that agents? So, and she's like, Lucas Kyle, due to your forthrightness and your willingness to accept responsibility, I will amend your sentence to 5 years in the mines. May the founders have mercy on you. Remove him. And he's like, no, but, and he's like taken away. And then she can hear some people yelling like outside, like, impeach Judge Meadows, impeach her, impeach Judge Meadows. So she opens her blinds, and people like, they draped his banners like over the railings, like, impeach Judge Meadows. And the four walkers have a rest at like the park area. So McLean asks Walker if she's all right, because she didn't come out of her hole for 25 years. Now she's out all the time. And Walker's like, yeah. And she's like, when I went up to those stairs to get that tape for Juliet, I was scared spitless. And she actually says spitless. She's like, and then I saw you, and I started thinking about all those years we wasted. And she's like, I couldn't remember why, at least any why that was worth a damn. So then McLean like puts her head on her shoulder. So Knox looks at them and he says to Shirley, he's like, if Meadow goes for it, sending people out to look around, come back? And she's like, yeah. He's like, would you volunteer? And Shirley's like, in a heartbeat. You? He's like, yeah. And Shirley's like, what would you want to see? He's like, the distance and Juliet. This is, this not knowing, it's fucking killing me. And she's like, I didn't think you liked her. Knox is like, she annoyed the living poop out of me, but I knew that I could trust her with my life. So then Walker comes out, it's like, look like we got company. And so Shirley's like, you gotta be kidding me. So Walker says, she's like, I'll handle this. So there's this deputy and this other lady. She asks the deputy if everything's all right. And this deputy's like, you heading up to judicial? And Shirley's like, yeah, we got a right to walk just like everyone else. So the deputy's like, we're not trying to stop you here. It's like, we're here to make sure you get there safely. And Knox is like, why? And the deputy's like, Sheriff Billings asked us to. And then Knox is like, no, why does he think we need? So then the other lady with the deputy, she's like, because you may have a lot of friends below, but above. And the deputy's like, people might be throwing poop, literally. Then the deputy's like, we'll peel off a couple levels below judicial. They see a sheriff's escort, they might think we've chosen sides. And Walker's like, so you'll leave us just when things are likely to get bad. But then Shredder's like, well, we should get on with it then. So Hank walks Billings through the firebomb incident, like, where it hit, all that stuff. Then Billings asks, like, where was the shooter? So Hank tells him, he's like, it was a retired Raider, Reggie Smalls. He said that he was just reacting as trained. And then a local kid, Cooper, was running up to try to stop him. And Billings like, anybody recognize him? And Hank's like, no. And then Billings like, I'd like to see him. And Hank's like, I wish you could. Judicial hauled him up this morning. And Peter's like, they give a reason? And Hank's like, no. So when I asked, they just gave me that look. That judicial look? And Billings like, I used to be in judicial. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's like, no, I know that look all too well. Do you still have Cooper's body? Meanwhile, Juliet thinks she's ready. She asks Solo to start. She's like, pump. She's like, pump hard. But he tries. It's like not good enough. It's like not a tight seal, whatever, on the hose. So she thinks, and Solo's like, I think I need to go back to the vault. He's like, I think I left it unlocked. And she's like, no, there's no one here. And she's like, yeah, I think we're okay. And he's like, I think I need to check. And she's like, no, it's okay. I saw you. You locked it. Which she didn't, because she was already out, like, on the platform or whatever. But she's like, you locked it. He's like, I don't think so. And she's like, you did. You closed the door and locked it. He's like, you're just saying that. And she's like, no, wait. She's like, what are you doing? You locked the vault, okay? And he's like, yeah, I locked it. So Bernard gets a report, like a message from the impeachment banners. He takes a drink. Then Meadows walks in. And she's like, was it you? And he's like, absolutely not. And she's like, I'm to believe that an effort to impeach me just arose spontaneously. And Bernard's like, people are afraid, and they're more afraid with every step that a group of mechanicals takes towards the airlock. And she's like, you should have read the letter that they sent. All they want is to build better suits and to send a few people out just to explore and come back. He's like, oh, just a little exploration. Oh, that's everything that is prohibited by the pact. And she's like, I wasn't going to agree to it. I was going to say that we'd form a committee to study these ideas. And Bernard's like, and kill it with bureaucracy. And she's like, yes. So he's like, I'm sorry about the impeachment talk. And she's like, look, I don't care. I'll be long before it could happen. He's like, would you come to my apartment for dinner tonight? And she's like, why? He's like, we need to talk about the next steps. And she's like, my next steps are out the airlock. He's like, I'll have your suit. You can try it on. Come at 7. And she's like, mm-hmm. And he's like, the mechanicals won't be up here until 9 o'clock. And she's like, okay. And she's like, I spoke to Lucas Kyle. You're right. He is dangerous. And Bernard's like, then why did you cut his sentence in half? And she's like, to make it seem like we're fair. Besides, someone like him, do you really think he could last more than a year in the mines? So Bernard just like kind of nods in agreement. He's like, well, I'll see you tonight. And she's like, if the mob don't grab me and throw me over the rail. He just kind of like chuckles and she leaves. So Juliet's still working on the hose stuff. So she thinks it'll work this time. She's a little nervous. And she says that when she's underwater, make sure, he's like, I know, don't stop pumping. I know. Hank and Billings, they go to like the morgue area, and there's this lady there, Juno. And she's like, there's no body. She's like, Judicial took it. And Hank says, it's like, no, we don't want to see the a-hole through the bomb. We want to see Coop. And she's like, that's what I'm telling you. They took Coop. And Hank's like, what? Why? And then Juno's like, they said that they were here for body, and the only one here was Coop. I tried to explain that, but they were Judicial. And Hank's like, no. It's like, there were 2 bodies here yesterday. And Juno's like, not this morning. And Hank's like, so what happened? And she's like, I don't know. He's like, you don't know? Did you not, like, lock the door last night? She's like, yes, I locked the door. You think I'm an idiot? And then Billings like interrupts. He's like, the one that's missing, describe it. And she's like, it was a guy about 40, medium build, big heart, with long hair. And Peter and Hank kind of like look at each other, and then Peter leaves, and then Hank follows him. So Juliet gets ready to go in. She has like this big like weight, something like thing tied to a rope, and it's like tied around her. So she drops it in, It's just like going down, and then she like grabs the rope to kind of like pull her down too. The hose works, but it's not that long because she gets to the point where she can't walk any further. So she takes some air up and then she just lets go of the hose. So then she's like walking, but then her weight gets stuck like between these poles or something like that, and she starts to panic. So she's like, and she's in a different area. So she kind of reaches the surface, not where Solo is, but she's just at the point where she can't get her head above water. So she kind of grabs on a railing and like a piece like breaks off. And she uses that, she starts like kind of cutting at the rope, and then she's able to climb out. Bernard puts on this record, he does some cooking, there's a knock on the door, and then Meadows has arrived. So Solo is still pumping, even though Juliet's not using the hose anymore. Juliet so she's out of the water, she's like in some air pocket, she's looking around, and she's like starts punching like these metal cabinets things to try to bend it so she can like peel it open, and it's like it's hurting her hands and her elbow, you know, she's like trying to pound on all this stuff. And she like looks, and she's like not finding anything, so she's getting frustrated. Silo's still pumping, he's getting anxious. Juliet finally returns, and he's like, I gotta go back to the vault. So he runs back, he gets the door, and she manages to follow him, and he's like, it's locked. And she's like, well, do you feel better? He's like, I'm gonna go back inside. Hits the code, it doesn't work. He tries it again, it doesn't work. And he yells, he's like, what did you do? And she's like, you wanted to keep me outside. She's like, I was with you the whole time. And he's like, one more try and I'm locked out. So he's like freaking out. And she like yells, she's trying to calm him down. And he's like, I shouldn't have left. He's like, it's safe there. Then she's like, maybe you should write it down. He's like, shut up. She's like, okay. And he tries again. And he thinks, he breathes, tries again, it works. And she's like, see, I didn't do anything. He's like, stay back. And she's like, Solo. He goes in and he like locks the door. So Bernard and Meadows are like laughing and talking over dinner. And she's like, you know, as lovely as this is, she's like, I would like to try on my suit. She's like, you said it would be here by now? And he just like sits there. And then her breathing starts getting kind of like ragged. And she like grabs her throat. And she's like, I know it wasn't in the wine. He's like, I wasn't sure if you'd drink it. It was the mushrooms. And she's like, how long do I have? He's like, minutes rather than hours. And then she's like, why? I must follow the order. It's like, you have a way that my death will serve that? It will unite to Solo. And, you know, she's like, got tears and stuff like that. He's like, Mary, I'm sorry. And she's like, the hard drive that Juliet Nichols had, where is it? He's like, I destroyed it. Why? What's on it? If I need to know something, she's like, even if you did know, there's nothing you can do about it. All I can say is it had something to do with Salvador Quinn, 140 years ago, when he was head of IT. And Bernard's like, during the rebellion? She's like, yes, he wrote a letter. Part of it was in code. And Bernard's like, what did it say? She's like, I can't tell you, Bernard, but you deciphered it, didn't you? And she's like, stop. I said I can't. You have to. She's like, 25 years ago, when I told you why I had to step down as your shadow, you said you didn't want to be tethered to me for the rest of your life. And she's like, which was a lie. I would have happily been by your side, but I knew that you could never give yourself fully to me. And he's like, why did you lie? I didn't dare tell you the truth. He's like, you vanished for 4 days. When you came back, you quit. Where did you go? And she kind of like groans in pain. And she's like, please, can I just go to the cafeteria one more time just to see the outside again? And he's like, no, but I have something. He takes out this box. There's like this visor, almost looks like a VR headset inside. He's like, did you ever use this when you sat with the Legacy or something like that? And she's like, no. He's like, it lets you see things, somewhat like what people that are sent out to clean see in their helmets, only this is real. And he's like, did you ever read about Costa Rica? He's like, the Monteverde Cloud Forest Biological Reserve, 2018. And so he's like helping her stand. And he's like, tilt your head up a little to the left. He's like, see that little fella lounging on the vine? that is a white-faced capuchin monkey. He's like, now watch it. It's going to leap from the vine to the tree on your right. And she's like, oh. And he's like, now look down and to your right. That is a ring-eyed tree frog. Do you see it? And she's like, yes. So he describes like its camouflage techniques or whatever. She kind of like stumbles and he has to like catch her before she falls. And he's like, quick, look at the top of the trees. That's a flock of quetzal birds. He's like, you can tell they're all males by their twin tail feathers. And she's like, so beautiful. And he takes off her visor, and then they kind of, almost like collapse on the sofa. And she's like, what did they do, Bernard? How did they lose this world? And, he doesn't know how to answer. He probably doesn't know to answer. But then she's just like quiet. And I guess she dies. Juliet's sitting outside the vault, and she's like, I thought we were past this, Solo. And there's just like a long pause, like nothing. And she's like, when I was set out to clean, I was so tired. Like there was a part of me that was, it sounds really weird. I was relieved that it was finally fudging over, Then when I got outside, I was really lonely, and I was so scared. I was really fudging scared. Every step I thought, like, this is where I collapse, or this is my spot. Like, this is where I die. And then, but I didn't. I kept walking. I didn't know what else to do. So I know what it's like to be scared, Solo. It's like, you're not the only one, Solo. It's like Captain Nemo would like to know more about that place. What do you call it? The circus? You could also tell me about the things with the long noses. It's like, I don't remember what they were called. And then she gets up, she hears like something, and she turns around. He opened the vault, and he like peeks out. And she's like, hey. And he's like, they're called elephants. And she's like, yeah? He's like, they also had cats, but they weren't like our cats. They were huge, and they could grow up to like 400 pounds. They were called lions, and they would train them to jump through hoops of fire. And she's like, really? He's like, yeah. So Bernard's like doing the dishes, whatever. There's like a knock on his door. Sims comes in, and Bernard's like, do exactly as I instructed. I'll meet you there. So he walks out. Sims goes in the other room, and so I'm assuming Meadows' body's in there. Then he kind of unfolds this blanket, whatever, and there's like a rusty blade in there. Billings talks to someone named Molly, which it's like, well, a secretary. I don't know if she was a deputy or whatever, but he's talked to her before. And he's like, when everyone was trying to get the Nichols, he's like, you took 2 men into custody. And she's like, yeah, Danny something Bly and Kennedy, Patrick Kennedy. So he's like, what happened to them? And she's like, judicial took them hard, gagged them and bagged them. And then Peter's like, Kennedy had a big beard and long hair? And she's like, yeah, why? We're working on something. So then he's like, take care. So to Hank, he's like, the bearded guy, did a doctor say he was dead? And Hank's like, no, not officially, but he wasn't moving when I took him away. Billings like, where was he shot? And he points to like the shoulder, or whatever, like the kind of chest area. Then he's like, oh no, it was over here, like in the other shoulder. So it doesn't look like it'd be a fatal spot. The walkers find a lot of commotion as they head up. There's a lot of people on the stairs. Knox yells, there's some raiders standing there. He's like, Judge Meadows is expecting us. He's like, we're on official judicial business. And someone in the crowd's like, animals. And says, you want to destroy the silo. Then to Knox, he's like, sorry. He's like, judicial's closed today. Knox is like, we're not leaving until we see the judge. And the dude's like, you are leaving. So go back down the stairs or over the side. And then he looks at McLean. Knox looks at her. She takes something out of her bag. She drops it over the side. So it falls and it bounces down below. And someone down there yells, red ball. So someone runs, whatever. And then at top, they count down from 5. The power goes out. And then they turn on some flashlight. People are in shock. And Knox is like, the power stays out until we see the judge. So then Bernard comes down the stairs. And Knox is like, Mr. Mayor. He's like, Mr. Knox, I see you've turned off the power. And Knox is like, bring out Judge Meadows and we'll turn it back on. So he's like, she's not feeling well, but I believe I can get you in to see her if you turn the lights back on. So Knox looks at McLean. She drops another ball, and then a little bit, the power comes back on. So Bernard starts leading them away. Raiders step aside. Just then he turns to Knox, and Shirley's like, just you two. So they're going to leave Walker and McLean outside. It's like, is that a good idea? They walk towards her apartment, or maybe it's her office, I think. He opens the door for them. They walk in. And Sims is inside, standing there. So they walk in. Sims is in there. And Meadows is sitting at her desk with a knife in her chest. And Shirley's like, WTF? And Knox like, they set us up. So Knox lunges at Sims, and Shirley like holds him back. She's like, no. It's like, listen to me. We have to go now. He looks at Bernard, and Bernard's like, I'm not stopping you. They run out. Sims asks if he's sure about this. He's like, I have raiders right outside. And Bernard's like, people of the silo have to take care of this themselves. So then in the hall, Knox stops Shirley. He's like, we can't run. He's like, there are 50 raiders and 100 angry a-holes out there. We walk until we get to Walker and McLean. She's like, then we run. Then we fudging run. So they reach them, and Knox like we have to leave. And he's like, quick, but don't look scared. So inside, Bernard says okay to Sims, and Sims starts to leave, but Bernard's like, the push to impeach Judge Meadows was unexpected. It forced my hand, made this necessary. I believe good will come of it. Still, I know you were behind it, Rob. Don't let him get too much of a head start. You wouldn't want to lose them. And then Sims leaves, and Bernard looks at Meadows' body. Outside, Sims yells, like, silence! He's like, I know some of you, many of you, didn't like Judge Meadows meeting with some down deeper. She only met with them because, in her words, every citizen of the silo deserves a hearing. Well, it seems she miscalculated horribly. Those animals from Mechanical just killed her. And people were like, oh. They wanted to open the airlock, and Judge Meadows refused. She gave her life for the silo. For you, for me, it is now the duty of every citizen to find those murderers and bring them to justice. Justice, justice, justice. And then the others are running down the stairs, and above, people start scrambling down. And that is the end. So that's not looking too good for them. So that is the end of episode 4. And now, Star Wars Skeleton Crew. So we got 2 episodes. It's not bad. It's okay. By the end of the second episode, things could start getting a little more interesting for me. Part of the thing for me, the problem is there's like 4 main kids that are like the main characters. And so that is great. That's phenomenal. I'm so excited for one of my students I know in particular is going to watch it this weekend. So that's cool to have that because we need young people to get into this stuff for it to continue. Same thing with comics. So we'll see. Some parts made me roll my eyes a little bit, but that's okay because it's fine. It'll be okay. So episode 1, this could be a real adventure, and so there's some stuff at the beginning. It says, since the fall of the Empire, the New Republic has maintained order, and yet remote hyperspace routes are increasingly plagued by piracy. These pirates boldly brand their armored hulls as a sign to all ships, surrender or die. So you see this freighter gets attacked by pirates. There's these big piercing hooks that jab through. So pilots rush to climb. The crew's getting ready, to fend them off like that. Both sides are they're shooting each other like that. But the pirates are outnumbering them. Then one ailing Captain Silvo, he says that the ship is his. So he boards. He has this helmet on. He wants to go to the vault, but the guy tells him that they're of no interest to him. This is a bulk freighter. And he's like, if this was a bulk freighter, why is your vault magnetically sealed? And they're like, we're protected by the New Republic decree. I hereby demand all pirate scum to leave this vessel immediately. They all laugh. And Silva punches him in the gut, throws him out of the airlock, or has him thrown out. And then they open the vault, and the others He's like, I know these cycles have been lean, that some of you have all but given up on me. Your good old captain. It's all forgotten now, because at long last, I brought you the only thing that matters, cold, hard credits. He kicks down the vault, because they're like laser cutting it or whatever, so he kicks the door down, and his alien pirate goes in, picks up a credit, and it's like, good men's lives were lost for a single measly credit? And then they all turn their guns on Silvo. So he's like, mutiny then. And he starts fighting them. Then we see this kid playing with like figures, like mocking like, Jedi and Sith. So his name is Wim, W-I-M. So his dad, Wendell, calls, because he's in his bedroom. He's like, you're going to be late for school. And he like kind of rolls his eyes and he goes down, eats his cereal. And then the dad's like, I'm going to be late all week. So he gives him like some credits. He's like, this is your lunch money for a week. And he's like, don't be late for school. And he's like, I won't. He rushes out. So it's like he lives in this like suburbs, which is kind of neat. See, like Star Wars alien suburbs. There's other like kid on the street. He's this alien boy named Neil, N-E-E-L. And he turns around and he's like, you should not have come here. But they're really pretending that they're Jedi and they're like playing with like invisible lightsabers. They get on like a bus. In class, their teacher's destroyed. Wim is sort of like drawing on the desk. There's like this big like tablet built into the desk. So he's like doing something there. This woman kind of clears her throat and he like shuts it off. So she's from the office of the supervisor. She's Undersecretary Farah. She's there to talk to them about tomorrow's career assessment test. She's like, in a way, this one test will set the course of your entire future. Once you are assigned a career path, you will become part of our planet. At Atkins' contribution to the great work, keeping the Republic peaceful and strong. So the droid teacher tells the class to tell her how they want to contribute. So they raise their hand, to say what career they want. Then she calls on a couple. Wim tries like ducking down, and she calls on him. He's like, well, my dad's a systems coordinator, but I think I really want to help people, like if there's danger or something. And the teacher's like, that's not a career. That's what safety droids are for. And a girl behind him chuckles. Farah is like, study hard, get plenty of rest, and don't be nervous. And remember, we all have a place in the great work. So Wim and Neil talk after class. Neil's like, you think you're going to fail since you forgot the test is tomorrow? And he also mentioned that he liked this one green alien girl named Runa. And Wim says that, he's like, you never even talked to her. Neil says that, he's like, I'm working up to it. And then he's like, I can't believe you said you wanted to be a Jedi when you grew up. And Wim's like, what? He's like, no, I didn't. And Neil's like, you basically did. He's like, didn't. He's like, well, basically you did. So, they got the dialogue, this is how kids talk. And he sighs. He's like, well, so what if I did? Don't you ever want to do anything exciting? And Neil's like what? And then there's a couple of kids like riding a hover bike in the city. And there's like these two girls. And then the engine sputters and stalls. Wim and Neil, they're walking. Neil arrives home. He's greeted by family. Wim comes home to an empty house. One of the girls is trying to fix the bike. Says that they need, I think her name's KB. I don't know if it's just the letters. It says that the hover bike needs a new power converter. The other girl's name is Fern. So, and the other boys, like other people, like stop by outside the garage because she's supposed to race this like jerky boy or whatever the weekend. So then Fern goes home. Her mom is home early, so her mom is actually Farah, and she's like, I have a badge for you. She's like, you got your spot back. It's ahead of class. And she's like, I was at your school. And she's like, don't let it slip again. She's like, there isn't a space for everyone at the top. And she's like, I'm just so proud of you. And Fern's just like annoyed and goes up to her room. So Wim is actually studying when his dad comes home. His dad tries to get him to go to bed, but he's like, I can't sleep. And he's like, please read me a story like Mom used to. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, but I got to work. So then he leaves the room, and he's like, as he's at the door, he's like, aren't you a little old for bedtime stories? So like, the dad is pretty much a jerk. So Wim's lying in bed. He decides to take out his tablet, and he's like looking at these like Jedi stories. Next day, Neil is on the back of a bus looking. Wim's running. He's like, I overslept, so he missed a bus. He's like yelling. He's like, I'm gonna take a shortcut. Goes back home, hops on the hover bike. He has to lift it over this barrier. He goes through like this wooded area. At school, they're all in this big room about to start the assessment. Neil's anxious because Wim's not there yet. He's like keeps looking around, looking at the door. Wim's still driving. He loses his helmet once his branch hits it, and then he has to skid to a stop at this one point because there's this big ravine. But when he stops, he falls off and like tumbles down, and then he's not sure like how he can get up because he's like looking around. It's like too steep and the dirt's loose. When he tries like grabbing this branch, like the roots kind of come out, and then he sees like something metallic under the dirt. So he gets startled because up top there's a droid on the other side. He's like, "You are in violation of school attendance protocol," and it's like, "Come with me." He's like, "Okay, how?" So Wim sits in a chair in the hall with a droid. Then he's like, "How much longer?" And the droid's like, "The proctor will see you shortly." Then Fern comes and sits a couple chairs from him. So he's reading his Jedi stories, and he doesn't notice, doesn't acknowledge her or anything like that. She looks at him and she's like, "What are you in for?" He's like, "I missed my assessment." And he asks her, and she says that something like she races bikes so the droids hate her. And he's like, "I saw your bike, it's totally wizard." So they use that phrase too here. Then she's like, "The last kid who skipped assessment, the proctor took him down to the secret chamber under the schools to make him work in the mines." And he's like, "Mines?" And Fern's like, "Never saw him again." And he's like, "Yeah, right. That's so made up." So then the door opens. So he stands thinking it's a proctor, but it's his dad. He's like, "I got pulled out of a review because you skipped your test?" And he's like, "No, I didn't skip. What happened to your clothes? They're filthy." So they're all like dirty and everything like that. He's like, "Dad, this is absolutely unacceptable, young man. Dad, that doesn't matter because I found something buried in the woods. I think it's a lost Jedi temple like this." He holds up his tablet. He's like, "A Jedi, Wim, I convinced a proctor to let you retake the test, but now there's a 50-point penalty, which means you have to get every answer right just to pass." And Wim's like, "Every answer?" And Wendell's like, "So can it with the Jedi's temple nonsense. You go home, you study. Tomorrow I will drop you off personally. I expect you to pass. Do you understand?" So it's like, oh my gosh, this dude. So Wim's like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "I got to get back to work." And he just like walks away. So Wim starts to go in the opposite direction, and Fern's like, "A Jedi temple out in the woods?" And Wim's like, "What?" She's like, "You said you found a Jedi temple out in the woods." He's like, "Oh no, I was lying." He's like, I better get home and study, like my dad said. Wim swings by Neil's house. His siblings are watching like a dancing holo show, like on the holiday special that Lumpy was watching. And so Wim climbs up on the ceiling. He knocks on a skylight. Neil's like in this big tub, and he gets like startled, but then he's like, "You missed the whole test. What happened?" And Wim's like, "Does your dad still have all those tools?" So they go in the garage. Neil says that, he's like, "You found a temple?" He's like, "Shouldn't you tell the supervisor or maybe our parents?" And he's like, "Why do we have to dig it up?" And Wim's like, "Because this could be a real adventure. No more pretend." And Neil's like, "You didn't even ask how the assessment went." So Wim's like, "How did assessment go?" He's like, "I think good." So Wim's like, "Okay, that's great. Let's go." And then Neil's like, "But promise we won't get in trouble?" He's like, "I promise." He's like, "Okay." So they go to the woods. They're at the ravine. Then Neil wants to change his mind, but Wim tells him to hold the rope because but then they end up both going down. So they see the thing, and Neil's like, "It's probably just buried junk." And Wim's like, "In the middle of the woods?" He's like, "Wait a minute, someone's been here." But then there's this booming robotic voice: "Trespassers, state your name. You are in violation of protocol. Answer or be vaporized. Who do you have a crush on at school?" Wim's like, "What?" And Neil's like, "Runa." So it's that other girl, KB, and she's like, "Sorry, Fern made me say it." So Wim's not happy when he sees Fern. He's like, "You," and she's like, "Me." So she says it's their find. Wim's like, "It's mine." He's like, "I already claimed it." And she's like, "I called unclaimsies, then I claimed it for myself." And KB, "No boys allowed." And he's like, "No calling unclaimsy without the claimer." So there's more bixing, whatever, and then they do claimsy, whatever, and then she gets it again. Because they're like, "Okay, 1, 2, 3," then she claims it or whatever. So it's just annoying kid stuff. But then she's like, "It's not a Jedi temple. This was supposed to be a new neighborhood development. Grandpa told me all about it. Something went wrong with the sewage substation. The whole thing filled up with poison gas. Didn't kill them though, just made them crazy." So basically, like, lying is her go-to. So she's so cool, she has to lie about everything. So she's like, they started to eat each other. There was no choice, and they had to bury them alive forever. She's like, my grandpa says, if you listen really closely, you can still hear them banging on the doors, trying to get out. So Wim and Neil, they get close to listen, and then Fern bangs on the metal with her shovel. And she's like, oh, you're so gullible. And Wim's like, you're a liar. But then they make some deals so they can all go in. Wendell comes home, he just yells, he's like, Wim, you left the garage door open. He's like, you better be studying. So it's not like, how was your day? How are you doing? How's studying going? So they're still digging. Fern laughs. She's like, these boys are so dumb because, like, or KB, she's like, you didn't have to be so mean. It's like, they did find it. Fern says that, she has no idea what it is, but she bet there's an old power converter in there. And then Wim, like, knocks some more dirt loose. KB goes for a closer look with her. She's got these, like, Geordie LaForge, like, glasses, like, visor thing that go over, like, attached to her head or something like that. And there's this panel that she opens. She plugs a cable in from the side of her glasses into the panel. There's some, like, rattling, and then the hatch opens. So they, like, slowly approach. After a few seconds, they look in, and Wim calls out, hello. And then KB, I think it's KB, not BK, because BK is a Burger King, so I think it's KB. Whatever. Says it's like someone's coming, and it's Wendell calling Wim. That's according to the closed caption, but it's like you don't hear anything, whatever. So then they grab their stuff, they go in, and then Wendell finds a helmet, and Fern's like, is that your dad? And he's like, you're gonna be in so much trouble. And then he's like, not when he sees that I'm right. So inside, Neil screams because there's like the skeleton, but Fern's like, it's just a droid. And Wim's like, a dead droid, looks like it died trying to pull this lever. And she's like, oh no, you're not gonna pull it. Neil, like, looks in and says, it looks like there's something inside. A rat, like, jumps out of an eye port, like, knocks the whatever thing out. And then the lever gets pulled, the door closes, KB tries, like, flipping the lever back up. So they're, like, banging and stuff like that, and KB says the door won't open without power, so all I have to do is, like, follow, like, the power cable. So the girls go down, like, this hatch where their power cable is. Neil goes too, but Wim keeps exploring, like, up top. And then KB hits his port thing, and everything powers up. Wim sees, like, all the controls, like, where he's at. He puts on, like, this headset. He tries calling Neil, because they had, like, radio, like, whatever, I forget what they were, like, Jedi Knight 1, Jedi Knight 2. But then Fern hears and grabs, like, a walkie-talkie, and Wim says that, he was wrong, that this is better than a Jedi temple. And she's like, don't touch anything. So they just have to open the hatch and then go home. So he says, he's like, okay, but he's staring at this flashing light, and then he hits a button. The place starts shaking, and then they go to the hatch, but they're, like, super high up now. So, like, I don't know if the ground just caved out or something like that. It just crumbled away. Then Wendell sees, like, the ravine shaking. So the kids are, like, on top of the ship, and Wim's like, is this a starship? And then he, like, waves his dad, and the place is moving. Wim's, like, almost falls off, but the other kids, like, hold on to him. They're hanging out the hatch. So he tries climbing back in. The hatch closes when he does, and then Wendell can only watch as the ship takes off. And they say, it's like, we have to turn around. Fern's like, it's probably on autopilot. Find a button that says auto. Things kind of calm down, so, like, rumbling so much. Because they're like, well, no, it's a barrier. We're going through the barrier. So there's, like, something around the planet called the barrier. Then they see the stars for the first time. It's like, oh, I didn't know there'd be so many. So they've never seen stars. And then the ship enters hyperspace, and they're like, ah! That's the end of the first episode. Second episode, way, way out past the barrier. So they're in hyperspace, they're still screaming, alarms are going off. Fern asks Wim's like, what'd you do? And he's like, I didn't do anything, which he's lying. They get it to stop, the ship just starts floating, like, out of hyperspace. So they wonder where they're at. And someone's like, we went through hyperspace, we could be really, really far away. And Neil says that they need to turn around and go home right now. Wim's like, okay, easy. And Fern pulls him back, starts to threaten him if he pushes another button. But they're interrupted by a loud clang, because they're like, wait, is there something else on the ship? Something like snarls. It's the one-eyed droid. And he wonders, why are there gremlins in the cockpit? And he looks around for the captain. He starts, like, pulling Wim and says he's going to take him to the captain. Then Fern's like, your captain is dead. And the droid's like, you're trying to fool me. And she says, then why are we here and he's not? So Niels asks Williams, like, what are we going to do? And Fern's like, don't ask him. He's why we're in this to begin with. Then she says that she's got this. She asks the droid, she's like, what's your name? And it says, some call him SM-33. So she's like, well, SM-33, I have some bad news. I killed your captain. And Niels like, and the droid's like, most unlikely. You seem ill-favored for combat. And she's like, but it's true. I stabbed him right in the guts and I threw him into space, which makes me your new captain, right? And he stares at it a bit and he's like, what am I to do with these stowaways, Captain? And Wim cries. He's like, hey, no fair. I want to be captain. It's like, shut up, you little... He's so annoying, I'm sorry. And the droid's like, as crew, you may challenge the captain to a battle to the death. He's like, no, that's okay. So then she's like, now, SM-33, show me how to fly my ship. He's like, it's simple. And he rapidly runs through, like, or like that, and like through like everything. And he's like, got it? And KB's like, yeah, makes complete sense. So she's obviously really smart, whatever, and I don't know if she's got like computer stuff in her head. But Wim reaches for another button. He's like, hey, what's this one do? They all scream, no. The droid's like, that's emergency full demolition sequencer, you fool. Never ever touch that. So Wim's like, he says that if he can fly the ship, asks if he can fly, and they're like, no. So Fern asks the droid if he can fly them home. And he's like, well, where is it that you call home? So I don't know who it was, someone said, at or Fern's like, it's at Atten, where they just were. And the droid's like, can't say I've ever heard of it. So Wim's like, we're lost. And Neil's like, we're going to be in so much trouble. And he says something about being past the barrier. But then, no one's saying anything. Wim cries out, it's not all my fault. And he storms off. So then the droid's like, shall I throw him out of the airlock for insolence, Captain? Fern's like, just bring us to some starport, that starport you mentioned. Someone there can give us directions home. So they go to hyperspace again. So then two safety droids are scouting through the forest after a seismic disturbance. They detect something moving fast. It's Wendell. They're like, this is a restricted area. And he says that there was a starship. He mentions the kids that took off. So they say that's not possible. Starships are not permitted to enter or leave it. He's like, I could be out past the barrier by now. And the droid's like, breaching the barrier is a serious violation. And he's like, we got to find him. We got to find my son. It almost feels like the impression I get is, why is this barrier up? It's almost like it's intentional to keep the people on the planet. Anyways, Neil calls out to Wim, says that they're in hyperspace, and he yells that when he comes across the skeleton, he's like, ah! He backs up, and there's like another one pinned against the wall behind him, more yelling. So it's like, just whatever. Then Wim grabs him and points, he's like, I think they died in a duel. And he wants to show him, like, Neil some other stuff. So he's now excited about everything. And Neil's like, we just need to get home. And Wim's like, home? We just got here. Neil mentions, like, the starport. He's like, wait, are we going to the starport? So they exit hyperspace. There's, like, a bunch of other ships docked. They get to this one thing. This ferryman, this little alien dude, he's going to take them to the port. So they go in this, like, little clear transport thing. There's lots of people there, lots of levels and stuff like that. The ferryman alien asks for payment, so Wim has to give one of his credits, and it gets excited. It's happy to get paid, I guess. Fern says that all they got to do is find one normal place to ask for directions, but they end up getting split up because there's so many people. Because Fern's like, we got to stay together, and they split up. So, but then she does bump into KB right away, so now they're together. There's this woman who was like watching them. She pulls them aside. She's like, are you children? And Fern's like, why? And she's like, honey, Borgo is full of the nastiest pirates in the sector. It's not safe here for children. And she's like, I got to get you to a transport. Do you have any money? So then it's like, So Fern's like, we have our own ship. We just need some directions home, and we'll be out of here. So obviously she can't be trusted, right? That's what I'm assuming. And she's like, where are you from? And they're like, at Aden. And she scoffs. She's like, come on. Seriously, girls, where are you from? See, so what's that about? So the droid's never heard of it. She's like, thinks that they're joking. So the boys are together. Neil says, something smells good. They should ask for directions there. So they go up to this like bar counter or whatever. The alien dude's like, what do you want? And Wim's like, we'll have two, whatever he's having. There's an alien sitting next to him. So the bartender dude puts on 2 bowls and then grabs this like giant bug, squeezes its guts on top, because it's a daily special, and he's going to do it a second time. And Neil's like, no, and squeezes it, whatever. He asks for 2 credits. Wim puts down one of his credit things. He's like, is that enough? And the bartender's like, whoa, where in blazes did you get this? I mean, this ain't enough. So he goes on about them also like wanting to leave a tip for good service. So I was like this. There's the other patron at the counter is like, watch it. He's trying to cheat you. The dude's like, mind your business, scum. Then the alien patron like grabs the credit and the bartender cries out. He's like, oh, my arm, whatever. And dude's like, where'd you find an Old Republic credit in mint condition? So Neil blurts out, his dad gave it to him for lunch money. And he's like, and Wim's like, no, shh. And the alien's like, lunch money. And this other alien in his trench coat, I don't think it was a pirate. I don't think it was Silver or whatever his name was. But he's in a trench coat, and he puts his hand on the boy's shoulders. Where are you two from? Neil's like, at Aden. Then everyone around like laughs. And they're like what? We're just looking for some directions. The bartender's like, yeah, you and me both. So the grabby guy's like, this has got to be fake. The trench coat dude, he's like, looks real enough to me. And then the other guy's like, back off or I'll pop your breathing sac. The bartender's like, see if they have more on them. Neil's like, Wim, do something. So he flips his bowl of food. It hits like the grill in the back behind the bartender, goes up in flames. And then he's like, run. The lady with the girl says that she's trying to help them. Fern's like, you're trying to kidnap us. KB's like, you're hurting my arm. And the lady's like, girls, whatever you're running from, you need a much better story than at Aden. And KB's like, but it's true. And she's like, really? You're a couple of Linderings from the lost planet of eternal treasure? So, oh, wait, what? And Fern's like, lost planet? And KB's like, eternal treasure? And then they hear, help! So they see Wim and Neil running from the big alien dude. Wim trips and they both fall. They like kind of scoot back against the crowd. And then the dude and the other are still coming. Fern comes out. She has a blaster from somewhere. And she shoots up and she points at them. Everyone back off. And she asks Wim, she's like, what'd you do? He's like, what? Nothing. Trenchcoat tells her to put it down. They just want the credits. And the bartender's like, there ain't enough to go around. He's like, and I saw him first. Then the big guy's like, unless they really are from at Aden. The bartender's like, don't be stupid. At Aden's a myth. Fern's like been pointing, she's moving the gun back and forth. So the trenchcoat dude rips it out of her hand. And Wim holds his hands up. Fern does the same thing. Then SM-33 comes up. Do not touch my captain. And I think he extends his joints and they start makes him like kind of taller as he's like walking toward them. Trenchcoat's like, get back to your ship, droid. And he's like, not without me, captain. And then the rat squeaks and peeks out of its eye socket. So there's still a rat in there. And Fern's like, and I'm not leaving without KB. Wim extends his arms like, and she's like, and the boys. So Trenchcoat sighs. He shoots the droid, but it like bounces off. So then he punches Trenchcoat and he flies back, knocking out some others. So he grabs the bartender, sends him flying up with an uppercut. And then he gives like 7 jabs to the big guy. So the other alien says, like, blast him. They start shooting. SM-33 makes like a little shield on his wrist and like blocks the blast. So it's just like this droid's like something. He's moving forward, like jumping and knocking the shooters aside. He's like, I humbly suggest we return to the ship. So they go back to the ferryman area and Fern's like, why did you bring us here? And SM's like, to get back to the ship. She's like, no, why bring us to port of pirates? He's like, because we are pirates. She's like, we are not pirates. You are not pirates? She's like, no, we're kids. He's like, why cannot kids? And then he gets shot from behind. He warbles and is like smoking. So the other pirates arrive. There's this big hairy alien dude with like this huge gun. He's like, what's a litter of runts doing in my starport? And they're like, we just want to go home. But then like, how do they have our coordinates? How did they get past the cannons? And then I think Fern's like, why didn't you ask our droid before you shot it? Neil scoops up the rat thing that crawled out of SM after he fell. One alien's like, don't worry, Captain. We'll get the truth out of them. And he's like, see that they don't run off again. And she's like, we're right here. You got a question. Got a question for us. Ask us yourself. And then the captain's like, feisty girl. Cool off in the brig a day or two. Then we'll talk. So they get put in a cell. I think KB is like, okay, enough moping. Let's figure out how to get home step by step. And Neil just like groans. So KB's like, step one, get out of the break. Okay, how are we going to do that? Neil's like, hey, what if we train this little guy to get the key over there? I think KB's like, we could try. So it goes out through the bars of the cell. It actually climbs up by the key. It's like moving. They're like, but then it moves into like other directions. So then KB's like, anyway, step two, find SM-33, fix him, and get him back to the ship. Wim's like, all of that is step two? Then KB's like, step three, we still need directions home, but everyone thinks Ad Adin is some sort of make-believe myth. And Neil's like, that's why those pirates were laughing at us. They think it's some eternal treasure. And Wim's like, who would believe that? And KB's like, you were the one who hyperspaced us to the other side of the galaxy because you believed we were in a Jedi temple. And Fern's like, it's like, look, maybe we can just buy our way out. And I think KB says, don't be so dense. Like, show them that. All you can do is steal it. And then Wim's like scoffs. He's like, well, at least it's a plan. It's like, we wouldn't be in jail if you didn't order 33 to fly us to a pirate. And then there's some man's like, no. So there's someone else in the cell. Don't fight. And there's like some cloaked figure in the shadows. Fear not. I only want to help you. And I think Fern's like, hey, back off. He's like, I can help you get to your ship. Find that planet of yours. All I ask is that you take me with you. I've been stuck in this scabby rock for too long. And she's like, how are we even going to get out of here? He's like, the key. And she's like, okay, genius, we can't reach it. He's like, the distance between us and the key is an illusion. And he raises his hand, the key rattles and floats towards them. And Wim's like, you're a Jedi? The man grabs the key and shushes like Wim. He takes off his hood. So we see it's Jude Law. So finally he appears. He's like, can you keep a secret? And that's the end of the second episode. So now that we got okay, I don't care what you say. If we have a Jedi, that always makes things interesting. We don't need a Jedi. I don't know if he is a Jedi. I don't remember what's been said. I don't know if they've said that Jude Law is playing a Jedi, a lost Jedi or whatever, or if there's something else going on. Because I feel like if he is a Jedi, that makes things a little too easy, a little easier. But maybe he's not. I don't know. So it's okay. But like I said, they write the kids well. The kids are kind of annoying, but they're supposed to be because they're kids. And I would say the way they bicker is kind of realistic in a way. So I think there's some promise to this. So I'm excited to see where it's going to go, and I'm curious about what's up with this planet. How come no one knows about it? And so we'll see. So check it out. Okay, then I just want to talk a little bit more about Interior Chinatown. So this is it's a show on Hulu, and I guess you can watch on Disney Plus if you have whatever signed up. It's based off a book by Charles Yu. So I'm curious about this. I don't really know anything about the book. I did hear I'm curious. The book is supposed to be, I think, like written kind of like a screenplay or whatever, because that's why it's called Interior Chinatown. And like at the beginning of each episode, there's like typewriting on a script. And so we have Jimmy O Wang. He's the main character. He's Willis Wu. He's this waiter who's in Chinatown. And the whole idea about this is, he's like a background character. He's just a regular bus or regular waiter. He doesn't have an exciting life. He's not doing anything, and he feels like he's just like a background character and like whatever. And that's the interesting thing about the show. I mentioned this last week. Is often. You don't often have, you rarely have Asians as like the lead characters, whatever. I mean, and if you look at like the Marvel universe, how long did it take for like Shang-Chi to come up? And, but then if you look at like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that was pretty groundbreaking, pretty diverse, because you had Chloe Bennett as Quake, you had Ming-Na Wen in there. So it's interesting, to see, different races that they should be given their time. It doesn't have to be forever, and if you don't care, what? But that's the thing. it shouldn't matter to people, because if the story is good, that's what matters. So, but we do see, and there are things that, you may or may not know about, like the Asian culture, if you know anyone, if you have any Asian friends or anything like that. But there are some things that, from what little I know, that have been are kind of accurate. As as obviously it's a show, it's fiction, and they're gonna exaggerate certain things. So I do like the whole premise and how it's set up. The show, the executive producer is Taika Waititi, and he directs the first episode. So I really feel like they should have leaned on that a little more too, because Taika Waititi is a big name. So if they could use that, but then again, it's not necessarily a Taika Waititi show, because I think Charles Yu is also the showrunner, so he's the writer. So that's cool. You got the writer to actually be in charge of the show, which it should be. If he wrote the book, he knows everything like that. So I think I mentioned. I'm curious if it's on Audible, because I'd like to listen to the book to see how they compare. Now, the way it starts off, so you have Jimmy O. Wang. He's kind of bored with life and it's like that, everything. So he works at the restaurant. His like best friend is Ronnie Chiang, whose name is Fatty. Fatty, all he wants to do is smoke marijuana and play video games. So he doesn't really have a lot of ambition. So and there's a lot of comedy, a lot of witty dialogue and stuff between them. But then it starts off the first episode where Willis Wu, Jimmy O. Wang, he talks about how they're taking out the garbage in the alley behind the restaurant, and how life's so boring and everything like that. And like in other stories, it's they kind of like joke, like in the opening part, that's usually when someone finds a body or something like that, and they get thrust into an investigation, and he's like, that would be so cool. And Fatty's like, wait, why do you want to see a dead body? He's like, I don't want to see a dead body. He just wants some excitement. He wants something different and like that. But then nothing happened, because Fatty, he goes to the garbage can. It's like, oh my God, because this is a time where they're supposed to find something. And he's like, someone threw away a whole like Peking duck, or I forgot what it was. And Willis gets mad at him. But then he has to go out and take more garbage. And then out in the street, he sees this woman. She's like kind of running, and he's like, "Hey, are you okay?" And she kind of looks at him. This car pulls up, grabs her, and she gets taken away. So he just witnessed someone get kidnapped. And then later, there's these two cops, which is like, it almost feels like sort of like a Law and Order thing, because you see them on the news, and they're called Black and White, because there's a black dude and this white cop, a white lady, and it's almost like the dun dun, whatever the noise that on like Law and Order or whatever. And the way they walk, and they even almost do like opening credits with them, but like as their character names or their whatever. And it's almost like a parody of that. So I think it's clever the way they handle that. And then at some point, because of the missing woman, they're going to bring in a Chinatown expert or something like that. So then they bring in Lana Lee, who's Chloe Bennett, and then that's how she gets pulled into it. Then it's from there. It seems like, okay, this is a clever show. It's this is what's happening. Here's what's going on. But then it kind of gets a little weirder and weirder. And I don't want to spoil things, but it's just like, wait, what's happening here? Because every once in a while, as you're watching, like when the two cops show up, and also like it's almost like the light changes. Or when like there's times in the police station, and then like lights are actually turning on and everything. So it's like, wait, what's going on there? And then it's almost like, wait, do they see that? Because then there's also a part where one of the dudes like talking to Chloe Bennett's character, and she's standing next to Willis Wu, and it's like almost like he doesn't see him. So then it's like, wait, is he really there? Is she really there? What's going on? And like there's like all this weird stuff that starts happening. But then, the story keeps continuing, and then there's like a bigger mystery going on. So it's like, how is all this connected? And it's like, why is Chloe Bennett's character really there? And I said this last week, I'll say it again. I mean, I love Chloe Bennett. I think she's just so hilarious. And what I like about this is it feels like her character, way she's acting almost like the way she appears to be. Like if you ever seen her like Instagram stories or anything like that, and just like every time, because I've interviewed her so many times at the press rooms for Agents of Shield, and so she's got like a very like funny personality, and it's not like a forced funny, like she's trying, and she's just like naturally, she's just like very calm and cool and witty, and so the character is kind of like that too, and I just really enjoyed the show, and I don't normally binge shows because you know how I feel about that, but because it was Thanksgiving week, so I may have mentioned this. The Monday of Thanksgiving week, my daughter and I watched the first episode, and we both liked it and stuff like that. But then she ended up having to house sit her aunt's place. So, and I was like, okay, realistically, it's like we're not going to be able to watch this. We're not going to be able to coordinate the time. So I told her, I was like, if you want, you can watch this on your own too. And she's like, okay, and everything. But then I think it was like the Friday, I ended up watching like. I don't remember. I ended up watching like almost all the episodes over the weekend, and then I had to watch the last episode during the week, and it's only, that was just because I kind of got a head start on the podcast last week before, so I had the time to, since I didn't have to work, so I was able to watch the whole show. So it was fun, but again, I would totally fine watching it week by week. So there's not much else for me to say because I absolutely do not want to spoil things. The only thing is, I would love more. So Rotten Tomatoes, let's see, it's 89% approval rating, but I don't know if we could get a season 2. It almost feels like, this is the whole story and everything. So as much as I enjoyed all the characters and all the actors, and I'd love to see more, it does a really good job. It's possible, but it would just, I think, I don't know. I think it would be pushing it if they tried the season 2, but who knows? And I don't know how dropping all 10 episodes at once would do. So I highly recommend, checking it out. Watch a couple episodes at least to see. And like I said, as you get deeper, it starts to go in this weird direction, which I thought was pretty cool. So check that out. Interior Chinatown. Okay, and now I guess I feel like, are we there yet? We've reached the movie feature. The movie feature is Wicked. I wasn't planning on seeing this movie. I was, when it came out, it was up against Gladiator. I thought it was coming out the following week against Moana 2. I was like, yeah, I guess I'm just not going to see it because there's other things. But then this past week came up and there was nothing. So I was like, all right, I'll go see it. Plus, my buddy, he saw it and he thought it was really good. But I was like, well, maybe you're just turning into a musical man, where you're digging the musicals. Because I think he watched In the Heights, which I think was also directed by the same director. So I was like, what's happening to you, dude? Not that there's anything wrong with musicals, but so I was like, I'll watch this. Because I wasn't like the biggest Ariana Grande fan. I don't listen to her music. It's just not my taste. And Cynthia Erivo, she kind of rubbed me the wrong way in some of her interviews. There was the whole thing about the poster where she got really upset because someone shadowed her out to make it look like the original Broadway poster, and I would be bummed too if there's if my picture was there and then someone blocked me out for whatever. But she was like making it out to be, I believe, I think she was making it out to be like a race thing because she's black. So it's like, and she's like, I'm a human being. This is not okay. Why would someone do this? Whatever. I fully believe it was entirely innocent. That it was, this is a cool poster. I'm excited for this. I want to edit this to look like I think it'd be cool to edit this. Not that they're trying to say anything. Not that they're saying that she shouldn't be seen or anything. But so there's that. And then there's this other interview it comes up on like Instagram. It was like Entertainment Weekly or something like that. Just she's talking about, and I was just like, okay, whatever. But what I will say, I'll just say Rotten Tomatoes. Let's go to that. What do the people say before I say what I say? The reviewers, the Rotten Tomato score is at 89%. So okay, that's impressive. The audience based on 25,000 plus verified ratings, 96%. So the audience loved this, and the reviewers seemed to really enjoy this. What did Tony think? Tony really enjoyed it as well. I thought they did a really good job. So now, as I mentioned, I may have mentioned before, if you heard what I said, is so my daughter saw the Broadway play. She went with like her grandma, and her cousin and her mom, and so she's like really into it. I've listened to the soundtrack a few times, driving her around. She's like, "Can we listen to it?" I'm like, "Yes." And even like recent, like last week, I may have mentioned, she wanted to listen to the original Broadway. And so, I know some of the songs, and so I kind of know some of the stories. And my daughter is also filling me in on, some of the characters and all that. And I may have mentioned this before. I feel like I may have mentioned this last week. But when my daughter was young, or when Scotty Young's Wizard of Oz comic came out, I was reading her the comics, and because she really liked Scotty Young's art, and I was obviously with Wizard of Oz and Dorothy, and she thought all those characters were cool and everything like that. So we were reading the Wizard of Oz comics because I would read them to her, and try to do voices and all that stuff like that. And there's a different volumes. So reading those comics and which are adapted from the original novels, I always thought that was so fascinating, learning about the backgrounds of the characters, because we find out more about Dorothy. You find about like the Tin Man, and he was a woodsman, and how did that happen, and just everything like that. So I'm really fascinated with the fact that there's like all these books and everything like that. And while a lot of people mainly just know the movie, which I think they did a good job. I'm interested to watch the movie again because it's been a while since I've seen it. And I don't know, there's just something just really intriguing about it. Aside from the fact, I don't need all the musical stuff so much. That's just me. I don't have a problem against it. It's just, the same thing with like the Disney, cartoons. Like I don't think people need to be singing all the time, but it happens. With this, I just think they just did an amazing job with it. So the visuals in itself, they bring Oz to life. The costumes, the look, just everything, the choreography. I mean, it's just amazing. And the songs are spectacular. You may not like Broadway show tunes, but they are really good. And then you throw in Ariana Grande and Cynthia, or I keep forgetting how you say her name, Erivo, and just everyone. I mean, they just do a good job. The two of them singing together in the songs, I mean, oh my gosh, again, there are some points where I feel like Ariana Grande was singing maybe a little too high for my ears, my preference, but that's how the song is supposed to be and everything like that. So I think they just did a really good job. And the story is interesting. The way the Wicked Witch is like, as Felba, the way she's treated and everything like that, it is kind of sad and tragic, and so I just think it's just a really good story, and like I said, just the way they do everything, and seeing, they even get to Oz, and or just seeing, the whole thing with Glenda and the Wicked Witch, where the whole thing is the Wicked Witch isn't really wicked, or she wasn't wicked, and Glenda wasn't necessarily like the nicest one in the beginning, but then, maybe things change and all that. So it's just interesting to see like this story like unfold with all that. And so it's just really good. So like when I got home, because my daughter, she was kind of like sniffling and everything like that. So she's like, there's no way I'll be able to go through the movie without having to blow my nose like 18 times or whatever. So, but she wanted to know. She's like, how was it? I told her, I was like, I thought it was great. And I was like, you got to see it. It's like, I will go. But she's like, she's hesitant. She wants to see it, but, there are certain things that she's not too keen on as well. And, but I was like, yeah, you got to see it and everything. So I think it's good. There was one part that was, I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned, it kind of got emotional. And, I didn't think I would enjoy this as much as I did, and it's just a really impressive production, and It's so, and I think I mentioned this during Gladiator. So like it's crazy to think the budget of this movie was only 150 million. Yeah, that's a lot of money, but I think Gladiator wasn't like 200 something million like that. So it's 150 million, and I believe I don't know if this is updated now, where the box office is 382. So it's more than double the box office, and it's probably going to keep going. I'm sure, like, through the holidays, like, people are still going to go back and see it, and maybe they'll start doing like the sing-along versions. They'll do something like that where they'll throw the words up on the screen so people can sing and scream during the movie or whatever, which no thank you. But I feel like this is going to be in the theaters at least for the next month or so, and it's probably going to keep making money. So and then this is a part one. I do appreciate, at the beginning when they throw up the logo, which they kind of go old school logo, which was really cool, but they do say part one. Because I don't feel like, I mentioned this before, I don't feel like they really advertise this as Wicked Part 1, because I think that would be a turnoff for some people. But what I would be afraid of is, like I mentioned when I saw like Across the Spider-Verse, and at the end it was to be continued, there's like half the theater is like, what? And I was like, how do you not know that this is a part one? But it wasn't billed that way. So I think it's kind of misleading if you don't mention that. So it's good that they're right up front saying this is part one. And so now, when the heck is part two? So we got to wait for that. I think it's like, is it a year from now? But yeah, like I said, they did a good job. And then in the sequel, they said that there's going to be some original songs that they're going to add to that. So I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with this. And so while, I wouldn't say that this is, the perfect movie or my favorite movie of the year or anything like that, I just feel like they did a really good job with it. And I was just super impressed with everything, like how they did this. And, I absolutely, like, bravo, like completely, like they did such a good job. Okay, so yeah, the sequel is going to be December 25th. Wait, no, Wicked Part 2 is, no, okay. It's going to be released November 21st, 2025. Originally, it was going to be December 25th, and then they said December 26th, so now they're saying November 21st, 2025. Yeah. In November 2024, Steven Schwartz and Winnie Holzman stated they're talking about the possibility of something more associated with the series, but it would not be titled Wicked Part 3 or 4. They went on further to say that they would be interested in exploring the wider world of the Wicked universe. I'd be down with that. Like I said, let's see some of the other characters. But I don't think we need all the music, but whatever, that's fine. So go see Wicked. Basically, if you've ever seen Wizard of Oz and you like it, who doesn't like the Wizard of Oz? But it's so amazing what they do with this movie, and it's really cool. So I would say that you could absolutely enjoy this movie. You don't have to be a fan of Broadway. You don't have to be a fan of the actors, the performers, but you will enjoy it, I say, unless you're just dead inside. I don't know. So go see the movie. And so that's going to be it for this week. There's nothing more to talk about. So thank you for listening. Big thanks to Andrew Loken for being a big supporter. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 to 45 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. Last week I did a What If. It was what if Thor and the Avengers battled the gods? So they're basically Thor's fighting Odin, and the Avengers, they get like power ups and they're just like fighting, and there's death. It's a tragic story. So you can check that out. I've been doing some Off My Minds lately. This week, I don't know, because I want to do more Off My Minds, but I also don't want to do too many at once and then not have anything to do. So we'll see if I'll do another What If, and then we'll see. Never know. But if you can't afford, or if you don't want to commit to a monthly commitment, or you can't afford a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck. You can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or two. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. And as I also mentioned, if you also want to support and get something more than just buying me a cup of coffee, you can buy a podcast download from the Patreon shop, G-Man from Heck. So next week, I believe next week is Kraven the Hunter. Is that? Yeah, we're there already. So I'm trying to be optimistic about it. I'm hoping it is not completely horrible. Aaron Taylor Johnson, is that his name? Because I always forget his name. I'm just really curious, and I hope it's good. I want it to be successful. I don't want it to be a dud. So we'll see about that. And then as far as what else is going to be on podcast, we'll have more Skeleton Crew, another Silo, another Cobra Kai, and we'll definitely have Creature Commandos next week. So thank you for listening. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you remember, be good to each other.